What's poppin', boyos? It is pod time. We have the 2 month in version, a little overdue as we usually are, coming at you with the boys of summer podcast. We're about 40% of the way through the year. We're about 60% of the way through the head-to-head playoffs. My co-host, my co-commissioner Eric is joining me. Eric, can you believe we're already halfway through the fantasy head-to-head season?
I know it's crazy. It kind of creeps up on you. There's that weird period where you don't feel like you're that far in, and then all of a sudden, yeah, we're more than halfway through. 19 matchups, and we're on matchup 11. So just a little over the halfway point for the regular season. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. You don't really realize it. The people criticize baseball for being such a drag, for being a slog. It's such a long season. Then you're kind of in it. You're like, whoa, we're already about halfway through. I thought it blinked, and then here we are. We're already here. It's gonna be playoffs before we know it. It's gonna be trade deadline before we know it. We'll see what teams are gonna be making their moves, finally offloading their final assets, and we'll kind of see how things go. See how things shake out. We know that there's a lot of teams that have moves to make. But that might come at a future time. So the plan is today is we're gonna do some MLB takes, some team takes. We're gonna go through some of the teams, maybe not as in depth as we might normally do. We're gonna go through all the trades today. Then next week is where we will come out with a more in-depth look at each team. We're gonna do some power rankings, and then we're gonna do I think Eric and I are going to come up with one trade that each team should make from both sides. One trade that we think would benefit both sides, and see if we can kind of conjure up some movement. Because although we have had 39 trades since the league calendar turned over, since I think January 1st or whenever, we have 39 trades. Only 14 of those have come since opening day. So a lot of teams have been a little gun shy, it seems. We'll get into that in here in just a sec. Eric, what's you watch more baseball than I do. You watch quite a bit of baseball. You got the MLB pass and all that. What surprised you about this MLB season?
Um, the NL sucks right now. I mean, it's really the Phillies, the Dodgers, and then who
I,
else? I mean,
I
obviously
did
the
I did see some Twitter beef with like a Phillies fan, then be like, who have you beaten? And it's just like you can list off any team in the National League, and it's like
yeah.
not really much of a saying much, but
It,
the
it's
AL is where all the good teams are.
Yeah, it's really three powerhouses. It's Dodgers, Phillies, Braves, and then like a whole like just tier after tier after that. But honestly, in the AL, a team that surprised me, obviously the AL Central with the Guardians and the Royals doing as well as they have has been, really fun to watch and see. I don't think anyone predicted the Guardians to be that good or the Royals to be that good. But I'll actually do a little bit of a surprise here. I know they spend a lot of money, they should be this good, blah blah blah. The Yankees being as dominant and as nasty as they've been without Garrett Cole this season,
Mhm.
with Judge and Soto and how great that's been, Stanton returning with the power bat, them not having too many big injuries. The Yankees in that talented of a division has been pretty surprising.
Yeah, that definitely would have been my pick is the New York Yankees. It you kind of look up and down the roster and it's like, yeah, they have Soto and Judge and Stanton's like hitting for power, but Stanton's also carrying a 224 batting average. Then after that, nobody else is in double digits for homers. So you're like, well, where's this all, why are they so good? I mean, yeah, having Judge and Soto certainly helps, but two players can't carry an entire team. We know that after watching the Angels for the last 6 years.
Yeah. Rodon
Not
turning back the
successful.
clock's been huge. Rodon has
Yeah,
kind of
and then
returned to
you turn
form.
over, to their pitching, and I think that's really what the huge surprise is, which is even more surprising considering the ballpark they play in. The Luis Gil, Cortez, Rodon, Schmidt, Stroman, all those guys pitching so well, and as you mentioned, they don't
Yeah.
have Cole. Their rotation's been like the best in the league, better than anybody. Their rotation's been so. It's been a really surprise. Clay Holmes carrying a 1.23 ERA.
They've given
Traded
up the least amount of runs in the whole American League without Garrett Cole.
Yeah, I
Crazy.
traded Clay Holmes in the offseason and got nothing back for him. So Jordan's over there reaping the benefits of that trade. Yeah, it's been really a revelation. And I really don't like to see it. I don't like when the Yankees are good. I'd rather the Yankees suffer. I don't like when the front runner teams, the teams that have all the money, they're just dominating. I will never root for the Dodgers and for the Yankees. So kind of sucks to see, but maybe we'll get through it. Maybe somebody can knock them off. Maybe it can be like the 76ers where they'll just choke come playoff time and then that'll make me happy.
There you go. Yeah.
What do you about think about now that we're kind of like 3 years in with the rule change? Do you have any takes on like any of the rule changes with steals or anything like baseball related? I don't even know what to even
Oh,
say anymore about like the baseballs because like I don't know, you see those tweets and I posted them in the group chat about like the Teoscar Hernandez 118 exit velo at this launch angle has never not been a home run before and now it's not a home run. And like I just don't trust anything from Rob Manfred or MLB to establish any consistency. But people online will be like, well, that's because each baseball is hand stitched. So with that being said, yes, there is variance in the overall shape and compression of the baseballs, which creates more variability, but it just seems like everything this year is just much lower than it's been when it comes to exit velos and ball flights and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, I'm not too much of a connoisseur on the launch angles and the velos and all that stuff, but I will say it does seem like over the last couple of years with the rule changes, the stealing bags, I don't even want to say small balls back because I don't think it is. You're still not seeing teams bunt or really do hit and runs too often, but to
It's true. I
really
don't see a lot
see
of that.
yeah, to see a lot more of the extra base hits and a lot more of the stealing instead of the strikeout or home run, strikeout or home run that it seemed to get a few years ago. I think baseball's as healthy as it's ever been. Now, if we ever go to a robot ump, I think that's the next stage. Whether that
Yeah.
happens or not, we'll see. But I really do think baseball's as healthy as it's ever been. At
Are
least
you team RoboUmp? Do you want it?
I'm not fan robo ump. No, I'm not.
Really?
No.
My issue with it is if you're gonna do it, it has to be done right. And that's like the thing with like if I know it's not an NBA podcast, but my problem with the NBA is they like review everything, they go to commercial break, they completely ruin the flow of the entire game
Yeah.
with reviews. And same thing with the NFL with the reviews in the final after the 2 minute warning. But then they go through all the reviews and do this and that, and then the game flow is ruined, but then they still don't get the calls right. And like that's what bothers me most about the NBA is like we still don't know it's a block or a charge. We still don't know it's goaltending, not goaltending, and like everything is still so arbitrary and all that. And same thing with the NFL. We don't know what a catch and not a catch is, but like you're still not getting these calls right, even though you're adding all these different technological views. And how come the viewers at home have more views than the referees have in the NFL?
Yeah. More angles.
Like
Yeah.
there's gaps. And my thought on it is if you can't overturn the call in 30 seconds, then the call stands. And that would be something a hill that I would die on is that if you're going to review something, if you cannot determine that the call was made incorrectly within the first three camera angles of the first 30 seconds, then you don't need to go to commercial break. Then the call stands and you move on. But I'm tired of going through looking at it for 4 minutes, going to commercial, and then just like being it's just a bummer. So
Right.
with the robo-umps, like I'm fine with it being robo-umps, but like I think there's teams that are doing it in minor leagues where it's like you have to appeal it. You tap on the helmet or whatever, and that's like your appeal of like the call or whatever, and that's fine. I don't know if you need the robo-ump every pitch or you get a certain number of challenges or whatever it may be, but I don't know exactly what the perfect formula for robo-ump would look like. I also don't have confidence in Rob Manfred
Yeah,
to
because
do it.
even some broadcasts have different, like what's a strike on one broadcast's K zone is not a strike on another team's
Yeah,
broad.
who said
So
that the K zone is accurate?
right.
He
So I
used
mean,
the
and again,
box
do we count it where it literally touches any part of the K zone where it's like, is that really going to be a strike every single time? It just briefly, the stitch of the ball, and that's where I think it just gets complicated. And you really got to trust when umpires make the right call. What is it, 90? I forget what the percentage of the time is. I think you got to like that. I mean, as long as we get the Angel Hernandez is out, right? Which we did. So
Do you know this? Does when they put that K zone up, that's right on top of home plate, right? And that's what really matters. It doesn't matter where the players, I guess, positioning in the boxes, I guess either.
right.
But the weird thing is like the K zone goes knees to chest or whatever it is. So the K zone up and down depends on where you are standing, where it crosses. But left and right, it doesn't. So it's kind of even weird that even the strike zone as a whole is kind of even arbitrary based on where you
Yeah.
stand, what your batting stance is, and all those kind of things as well.
And I think
Um,
it's part of the little bit of the art of the game, knowing the umpire a little bit. Even the Cubs broadcasts have like, are they pitcher friendly? Are they hitter friendly?
yeah,
What do they usually like to call? And again, I think it is a little part of the game. I mean, obviously, you don't like blatantly bad missed calls, but I do think there is a little bit to the art of framing, of kind of knowing your umpire a little bit, knowing, what the batter likes to swing at, stuff like that. I think if you completely take that element out, but I was also against the DH being in the NL, so I'm a little bit old school in that way.
yeah. All right, let's switch gears back to fantasy. If we go to our roster or our homepage here, we'll even go to our standings page here. as we pull up our standings, these are our head-to-head standings right now. We have in first place we have the Beantown Boys, followed by me, Chad, New Jordan, Eric, Jay, Krim, Dana, Chris, Team T-Pain, Tyler, Justin, Dex, Phil, and the Platoon, Peter, coming in
Whew.
last place. What has surprised you most about any of these teams you see here on the list?
Um, I would say based on my initial rankings and who I had in the playoffs and this or that, we talked about it possibly happening, but I still had Peter rated pretty high, even though he lost Garrett Cole. And we knew that depth was going to be an issue. We knew that he usually doesn't make the moves. He usually just kind of sits and waits, and that is kind of what happened. But I mean, his team 26 roto points is pretty awful. That's about where Tyler was at a certain point last year. So I mean that's bottom barrel type really bad stuff. So I really did think Tyler's or Peter's team would be better than it was. And I was wrong on that. His team's been dreadful.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like after Jay won the championship 2 years ago, everybody wanted to take the Jay blueprint of get your 4 or 5 superstars and then just get your $1 players at the end and then, do that formula. But with the new rule changes this year in our league where, we're drafting the reserves all in once, those dollar players were garbage. Those are not they weren't players 260, they were players 360. And
Yeah.
their overall quality of those dollar players at the end just took a really big downturn. And he was banking on contributions from those players he got basically auto drafted at the end of the draft, and they haven't contributed anything. And then you were 1 injury or 2 injuries away from the whole thing crumbling down. And when you're not getting contributions from other guys in your roster, you end up with 26 roto points and a 23-69 head-to-head record. It's been pretty brutal for him. I'm not going to say it surprised me, though. I mean, yeah, there was some decent piece on his team. You look and he's like, well, he's got stars. He'll be okay. But unless you round out your team with contributions across the board, it's not gonna, turn out well for you. Um, I guess should I be surprised that Bryce is actually coming through? I mean, I was a fan of his team,
Yeah.
as I usually am. I think it's 3 years in a row I've been a fan of Bryce's team, and then come trade deadline, he's a seller usually, or you're not usually at the top. But this is the first year he's kind of maintained. He's kind of got a good squad. I'm a little disappointed in Dana's team. I thought his team was going to perform a little bit better than
Same. Yeah.
eighth
I had him
place.
as a playoff team. Yeah.
And does Phil owe you an apology? I mean, you were
Well,
right to put him down there, and there he is.
here's the thing. I said I trusted it. Yeah, and I said I trusted his ability to make trades, and he's not made a single trade since the draft. So I don't know. I
Well,
don't know
he
what's gonna
made one.
happen
He
here.
made one
Is
with
I
one for
just I
one with
saw it from the beginning, man. It was rough. Oh, that's right. The one we're gonna
Zach
gloss over
Littell.
because like it was two meaningless players.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Zach.
No. Overall, it's been tough. But I think yeah, Phil's team's the writing was on the wall for that. When you had him a little higher, I think you had him. I can't remember where you had him pre after the draft. I think you had him like 8 or 9. But yeah, I will say this: one of my surprise teams, and you didn't even rate yourself that high. I think I had you 11th in my
Yeah,
preseason power rankings
yeah.
after the draft, and all year, Kyle. I'll be honest. I've been saying I think your team's been overperforming. I think your team's overperforming. But again, when we get to a certain point in the season, you got to stop asking that question and start wondering is this really his team? And I think so far it's been proven that you're definitely one of the better teams in the league when I think preseason it looked a little hairy.
All right, so if here I do have our power rankings post draft here in front of me. So number 1 and 2 was a tie between Chad and Eric. So Chad and you tied at 1-2. Then we had Dana third, Bryce fourth, Jordan fifth, about right where he's at. Peter, we had sixth, and now look at him down in 14th there. Then in a conglomeration at seventh, eighth, and ninth was Chris, Krim, and Justin, right about where they are. Then 10th, we had Phil, Dex 11th. We had me at 12th, Tyler at 13th, and Jay at 14th. So I guess we could say Jay has been a big time overperformer. Why should we
Oh yeah.
be surprised? Because every year we do this, we don't like Jay's team, and then his team continues to surpass our expectations. So he's got a little mojo. I don't know why we keep underestimating him. We should probably stop doing that. So I need to put a little respect on Jay's name and
Yeah.
continue to overperform
I had
expectations.
Jay 13th in mine too. So I mean he's definitely overperforming so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler's overperforming. I mean, being in 10th place, that's really good for him. Really big strides over there at Team T-Pain. Coming in 10th place. It's a really solid year. Something that he can build on. Jordan's been a little bit of a surprise, and then Bryce. I mean, being in first place and head to head right now. I mean, we had him fourth in the power rankings, but we didn't think he'd kind of be in that top tier the way he is. So I
Yeah.
think there's kind of been some surprises both ways, but then some non surprises. Some guys that we kind of expected to be there, but that's kind of the beauty of fantasy baseball. It's not just about drafting Christian McCaffrey and knowing it's a basically ticket to the playoffs, and you got to play the games because it's subject to regression, subject to volatility is fantasy baseball. So at this time, we are going to go team by team. We're going to go top down, so by our head-to-head rankings. So we'll start with the Beantown boys. We'll work our way down. We're going to talk about the trades that they've made and just kind of what we feel about each team as we kind of go through them. So starting with the Beantown Boys, Bryce's team, definitely been a pleasant surprise. I think it's been the best offense in the league by total roto points. I think he's got a pretty good roto standing. The balance of the roster has been pretty solid overall. Battling a little bit of injuries, but what do you expect when you have Tyler O'Neill? He's going to get hurt. Starting to get a little bit thin, but he's gotten some good contributions out of like Willie Abreu and some others. It's got a little bit of pop. It's got a little bit of speed. But one thing that we didn't really mention when we were talking about the landscape of the league as a whole and a landscape of fantasy baseball, and I kind of want to put this disclaimer. Hopefully, people aren't just skipping through to their part, and once they saw it was Bryce, that they're just kind of skipping through now. But one thing that I feel like we need to do is we kind of need to lower the bar on what it means to be a good offensive team, and we need to kind of raise the bar on what it means to be a good pitching team because right now we're 2 months into the year and pitching is just way ahead of hitting right now. And I don't know if it's a baseball thing. I don't know if it's just a exposure thing or what the real rationale is on why pitchers seem to be so far ahead of hitters. But like this offense has holes, but this is still the number one offense in the league. And so I think it's kind of an indictment on what we really expect out of our offenses right now. I know Chad's frustrated with his offense. I'm frustrated with my offense. But then we look down and we all have really solid offenses as a whole, but we have holes in our offense. So I think we need to kind of change the bar on what we really view as a good offense and a good pitching staff right now. And it's going to kind of show when we're doing a lot of our ranking here and going through each team. So as I'm looking through this team, it's solid. It's got power, it's got speed. It's getting Juan Soto, Tatis, big contributions from them, and just a lot of homers across the board. Ward's been good for him. It's been a solid pickup in that trade. And I'm already going back on what I said I was going to do, which is talking about the trades first.
Oh, you're
So
fine.
I'll go back to that in a sec. Then the pitching staff doesn't really look great on paper. It's kind of been a little bit of Achilles heel for him, which is why he's not higher in our roto standings, where he's gotten good pitching performances enough to get him some headwinds. But certainly having two guys with 5 ERAs in your rotation is not a good way to end up in the money in the roto standings. So before we get to Bryce's trades, what's kind of your overall take on what you see out of Bryce's roster?
Bryce has done a pretty good job of holding it together. I mean, obviously he's the number one head-to-head team. Like he's not number one in roto. You and Chad are holding that pretty secure right now in terms of point differential. But in terms of head-to-head, he gets it done week to week. He's got a really good team that can go out there and win those categories. He's got power, like you said, with Walker, even Tovar. I mean, who would have expected Tovar to be on pace for almost 30 home runs?
Bryce is 30.
Ward, Abrams, what Soto and Tatis are on not surprisingly carrying him right now because I mean that's what you pay him for. That's why you spend almost $100 on the two of them is for them to do that. But the pitching solid, like I said, we're going to talk about trades here in a second where I was a little questionable on a trade he made, but Lodolo's really done well after being awful last year in his limited amount of time. Gilbert's been as advertised. Skubal has been really rubbing it in since I scoffed at spending 31 on him. He's an AL Cy Young candidate
Yeah.
for sure right now. So his pitching's really
I
holding it
saw,
together. It's
I
just
saw a stat. Chad's not going to want to hear this, but I think Tariq Skubal has a higher K percentage and a better ERA than Mason Miller now in more innings.
there you go. There you go. Yeah. But no, like I said, I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, Tatis Soto carrying him, he's getting a little bit of pop from other guys like Walker, Abrams. But like I said, the team has holes in it, but when you do that big superstar approach, you can kind of get away with it. And if those superstars are healthy, which some people have not had a healthy superstars, Peter losing Cole, you losing Acuna, we haven't even talked about the pitcher injury epidemic yet. But overall, like I said, Bryce is just a well-rounded team in a league right now where I don't think there's a lot of well-rounded teams. In the past, I think we've had a couple teams like Chad's last year, Phil's offense a couple years ago that were obviously stacked. Nothing can stop them. And I think in a league where you just kind of have to be well rounded, and I think Bryce has that right now.
Yep. And yeah, you can get away with the star approach when you have guys like Ward, who's contributing, Duran, who's contributing, Tovar, 10 homers, 28 RBIs, 35 runs scored, decent on base percentage. And across the board, you're getting contributions from other players. But, you can't take the star approach if you're getting duds and, sub 250 on base percentages and all that kind of stuff. Berger is kind of the big outlier of the guy that he really needs more production out of. But that's why he has a Rafael Devers offer in his inbox right now that we're trying to pull the trigger on, but we'll see if that comes through or not. So let's go to the trades. See the trades that the Beantown boys have made. So he made a big one on May 13th. That really kind of changed the landscape of his team. It was a big 4-for-4 trade. He sent out Luis Severino, Willy Adames, Jordan Hicks, and Riley Green. He got back Jorge Soler, Taylor Ward, Bailey Ober, and Chris Bassett. And at the time, I really didn't like this trade for Bryce. I was like, oh, here we go again. Bryce is kind of giving it all up. And giving away Riley Green and Hicks. And it's like, man, he's like taking downgrades basically everywhere because at the time, Riley Green was playing out of his mind. Hicks was pitching really well. Adames was hitting home runs left and right. And like since that trade, let's see, it's May 13th. That was like a month ago. So it was, about 28 days ago. In the last, 30 days, Adames only has 2 home runs. And Riley Green only has, in the last 28 days, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, and a 299 on base percentage. And then Jordan Hicks in that time, 24 innings, 3.75 ERA, 1.333 whip, and only 1 win quality start. So actually, looking back on that trade, it's kind of looking like he might come out on the winning end of this trade. I think I would have given Bryce like a D, maybe D minus at the time, but from the performances that he's got, and since then, Taylor Ward himself has hit 4 home runs. Taylor Ward is combined for the same amount of home runs as Riley Green and Adames have combined. So it's kind of turning out to be something that I don't know if it's
What
going
about
to,
Ober though?
but I'm going to have to maybe give him like a B for the trade. Actually, I think he got out on at the right time on all those guys.
Uh I don't know. It's tough because the second this trade happened, I think it was a trade of track record versus what they've done for me this year. Because Jordan Hicks was one of the best pitchers in baseball when this trade happened. Willy Adames still is on pace for a career year. Severino has turned back the clocks to all-star form. So, I mean, he got Ober, and Ober's still been trash. Bassett's been good since he's gotten him, but Ober's been awful. And I think he went for Ober and Bassett have had a little bit more of the recent better track record. I'm going to trade that away. It's only been a month. I think it's like I said, it's very tough to grade right now because it only has been that month. But I could see what Bryce was thinking. I'm going to go with the guys that have been there, done that. There's a lot of season left. I'm going to trust those guys. But overall, man, I did not like this trade when it happened, and I'm still leaning towards Tyler's side now. I think Adames, like I said, is on pace for a career year. Jordan Hicks, we'll see if he holds it together, but I could definitely see it happening. Riley Green, I think, is going to be fine. Severino, honestly, out of all of them, Severino's the one I probably trust the least, and he has looked really good this year in those spots. So I still got to give this one to Tyler. It was kind of a head scratcher for Bryce where he was in the standings and how he'd been doing, but he still held it together. He's still number one in head to head.
So we'll talk about this trade for Tyler when we get to Tyler's team. But what's the grade then that you would give just Bryce on this move?
Like I said, it's really tough to grade only being a month since, but I would say as of right now, I would say a C minus.
Ooh, interesting. I mean, I think he's certainly gotten more production out of the players he acquired than the players he gave up. But we'll see if Bailey Ober turns it around too, because Bailey Ober's, he is. I think that was kind of the headliner. I think he was looking at Bailey Ober as being like his big pitching upgrade that he needed. That's what we were looking at his team saying this team needs pitching. And I think he was hoping for Bailey Ober and Chris Bassett to do that, and they have not done that. Bassett has a 3.8 ERA, 1.37 WHIP, and he's not going to strike a lot of guys out. He's got under a strikeout an inning. So I think that's kind of the goal, and I don't know if he accomplished his mission, but inadvertently, I think he's getting a lot of production out of Ward and Soler. You know, he's got to get hot. Soler's got a 281 on base percentage and only 7 homers and 18 RBIs. It's not getting it done. Then he also traded Pablo Lopez, Hunter Green, and Justin Turner, all his pitching, for Logan Gilbert and Nick Lodolo. And maybe another instance of getting out at the right time because Pablo Lopez has been brutal this year. Hunter Green has actually been surprisingly pretty solid. 3.61 ERA, 1.51 whip, 84 strikeouts in 77 innings. He's probably been the best pitcher. Has he been better than Logan Gilbert? No, Logan
Right,
Gilbert.
probably close, yeah.
So yeah, Logan Gilbert is probably the best pitcher. He acquired Logan Gilbert. He acquired Lodolo. Lodolo 2.92. Lodolo pitching well.
Yeah.
2.92 ERA, 0.99 whip. I did not know Lodolo was pitching that well. So all it cost him really to upgrade his pitching was Justin Turner. And Pablo Lopez has been pitching like crap. Hunter Green pitching okay, but not been pitching as well as Gilbert and Lodolo has been. So I got to give this trade an A. I think he did really well here.
Yeah, and it's easy to say that now because I think if we again would have graded this April 23rd at 10:57 p.m. when that happened, and we saw, Lodolo didn't even pitch last year. So this is, I mean,
And I was high on Pablo Lopez.
right. So if we would have seen this April 23rd, 3 weeks into the season, I think we would have screamed and cut Bryce's head off for giving up
Yeah.
Pablo Lopez and Hunter Green. But it's worked out, like you said. I mean, it really has. I mean, you can't really scoff at it. I do think in terms of keeper, if Pablo Lopez goes out and has a great next 3 months, Hunter Green and Pablo Lopez, bang bang. That's a great little addition. But
Yeah.
right now, based on what's happened this season, I mean, this is a huge win for Bryce. Which again, I don't think we would be saying that on April 23rd.
Yeah. Yeah. Me either. I thought for sure Pablo Lopez was going to be like a top 5 Cy Young kind of guy, but not kind of who he is.
And Turner got off to such a great start, and he's just fallen completely off. I know
Yeah.
we haven't even
I
said his name
remember.
in this trade, but
Yeah, I remember turning to my dad because we were in the trade. He wanted to trade, or he wanted to. We're in a share a team together in a Yahoo league, and he wanted Justin Turner. I'm like, no, I don't really. I think he's kind of cooked. And then like a month into the season, I'm like, God, I gotta eat crow here. Like Justin Turner's just tearing the cover off the ball, just doing what Justin Turner does, and then he hasn't done anything in the last month or so. What's he done last 30 days? 0 home runs, 4 runs scored, 5 RBIs
that's rough.
these last 30 days, last 70 at bats. So yeah, he's been pretty brutal. So you haven't really gotten any production out of him in a position first and third base where you expect those positions to slug. You need home runs out of your first and third baseman.
Yeah.
You can't afford to get 0. So I mean, overall, I mean, the 2 trades that he's made so far, I think have certainly helped his team, help get him to where he's at. I mean, he's upgraded his pitching, he's upgraded his hitting, acquiring Ward and Soler. And so and I don't think it's really cost him much. The guys that he's traded away, and Pablo Lopez and Jordan Hicks and Riley Green and Adames are all like underperforming. So I thought it was some pretty good moves that he's made so far.
We'll see. I mean, Adames is still one of the best, I think. I mean, he's still on pace for 20 bombs and 100 RBIs and 20 steals. So it's tough. We'll see how it pans out at the end of the day. Not in love with the second trade he did. We'll see how it pans out.
You don't have to love it, but it's working for him.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to our next team in the head-to-head standings, which is me, Burns when I PB. I've made 2 trades since the season has started. I made the big Mookie Betts trade with Krim, and then I made another, I guess, mid-level trade, sending out some pitching, acquiring some hitting in the form of Corey Seager. So what's your kind of takeaways from these 2 trades that I've made now that we're pretty far removed from both of them? We have a pretty good idea how they've planned out so far.
Yeah, the first trade obviously happened just a few days after opening day. Mookie Betts got off to his big start in Korea, and then obviously to start those first couple days, that one's a tough one, man, because obviously giving up Mookie Betts has been tough. I know you've been searching, trying to fish for him back for a long time afterwards, but that one obviously it's just tough. Mookie Betts has been an absolute killer. Obviously, he didn't keep up the pace he did at the beginning of the year, but he's still putting up absolutely insane, good all-star type numbers in that lineup. So that one very tough, especially when you throw in the fact too that, like I said, Devers has been banged up a little bit too. I mean, Devers, he's been fine, he's been okay, but he's been banged up a little bit overall. So it's not as bad as it looked those first few days, but obviously Betts is the headliner there. The other trade, like I said, I think it really did work out for you overall. You got a superstar in Seager. Bello has kind of again not been as great as he was in that first month compared to what he's been in that second month. He's been kind of struggling the last 30 days, but I could see him being a nice young piece that could be a keeper, but like I said, he's been really struggling as of late. But you got Corey Seager. Corey Seager is one of the best bats in baseball. On the other end, this is kind of like a trade that I think is still a little tough to grade because Jordan's team's good. Jordan's team is still in the head-to-head race. He's in the roto race, all that stuff, and he gets Scherzer back soon, which is a product of this trade. Because
Mhm.
so far, I think the return of Sanchez and Merrill has not been worth it whatsoever for a team trying to compete. But Scherzer does come back soon, and that can make a big difference.
And Scherzer, I think, on like a $4 A contract as well. So, and
Yeah.
again, he's getting up there in age. I don't know how many years he's got left. But we'll see if he ends up being a keeper. Maybe 2-year keeper could be if he kind of stays in the league at a reasonable amount. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I do. There was part of me that regrets the Mookie Betts trade, but at the time, I didn't have a third baseman. I have 3 third basemen now. I just lost Royce Lewis to injury, so I had to trade Mookie Betts because third base is the one place he couldn't play. So had to do it. Had to get Devers in. Actually, in the past month, Devers has 9 home runs, 22 runs scored and 20 RBIs for
I think he had
Devers.
that stretch where he hit like 6 in a row, 6 in like 6 games or something, 5 in 5
Exactly.
games.
And
Yeah.
and in that same stretch, Mookie Betts only has 4 home runs, 15 runs scored, and 10
Yeah, but we're not always
RBIs.
looking at the last 30 days here, Kyle. We're looking at the whole
But that's just
season.
about the time of since the trade. I mean, I guess it'd be 2 months since the trade, but
The trade happened 3 days into the year.
yeah, but 2 months, 2 months, 1 month instead of 2 months. I don't. There's no last 60 days button on here. I'm sorry. I'm just
Just
doing
look at
the
the whole
longest
season
time
minus,
frame that I can do that I'm working with here. I'm just doing my best here.
right.
If we take out and extrapolate the how Mookie performed when he was overseas to start the year, then but yeah, I mean, and I think a big sleeper is Miguel Garcia. I've really liked the way he's performed. I mean, he's hitting leadoff, but he's got 43 runs scored and 36 RBIs at the leadoff spot. Not to mention his 15 stolen bases, and I think the on base percentage has gone up, 305 now, and I think that's gonna kind of continue to go up. His batted ball data is looking
Wow.
good,
I mean,
and
he's on pace for 100 runs. That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
100 runs and
30
about
steals.
80
Yeah.
RBIs, 30 steals. So he's been pretty solid. So pretty solid, pretty versatile. And so, I'm pretty happy with the return. That's the kind of return that when you trade a superstar that I would want is if I'm trading a Mookie Betts, give me one piece who is a stud, who was a lower tier stud, and then give me some other maybes. And sometimes those maybes will hit, sometimes they'll be Cedric fucking Mullins.
Right.
And
But I think overall, like you said, with the Garcia, and you really look at those stats, it really hasn't worked out as badly as I think it looked that first little bit. Because I mean, France and Whitlock have been like irrelevant, right, for the most
Whitlock
part.
is basically out for a long time, 60
Yeah.
day IL, and then France was bad for a month, and then he ended up back on my team. But again, he's only got 7 homers, 27 RBIs, so he got dropped by Krim a while ago
Yeah.
and
So
scooped back up, but we'll
maybe
see.
this one ends up being good if Garcia keeps it up for you. Yeah.
Yeah, Bello's been really bad. He's 4.78 ERA, 1.35 WHIP. In this landscape, that's not getting it done. Corey Seager got really hot, and then I sent out that message about how hot he was, and then he hasn't hit a home run since. Christopher Sanchez actually been pretty decent, 2.71 ERA, 59 strikeouts. Oh, really? The strikeout number is a little bit down. Only 59 strikeouts in 66 innings. And then Jackson Merrill, I think he's a better real life player than a fantasy player. 3 home runs, 23 RBIs, 9 steals, and a 309 on base percentage. So you're really only getting like one category, 9 steals out of him. So not really a guy you really want in your lineup a whole lot. And then yeah, just depend on what we get out of Max Scherzer. So enough about my trades. When you kind of look at my roster here, this is a second place roster, second place in Naruto, second place in head to head. Is this a team you view as a juggernaut, or is a team that doesn't really strike any fear in your eyes?
I would say it's definitely performed better than I thought it was going to. Like I said, me and you both, I think, had your team rated as a bottom 5 team, and you really haven't made. I mean, you've made obviously 2 big-ish trades. I would say these are 2 of the bigger players moved around in trades, in Betts, Devers, and Seager and such. But you've done a really good job of just rounding out the offense. I think Josh Naylor's obviously his pace of maybe 40 home runs. Devers has been good. You got Seager back. You are kind of also riding that superstar approach. I mean, Teoscar's been amazing as well, but you paid 18 for him. It's really been that superstars and scrubs approach as well for you, and it's worked out. How about Fry from Cleveland too with
Yeah.
those numbers? That's amazing. From that
It's
the 450.
the whole catcher argument coming together. It's why I pay $20 for a catcher when you have David Fry sitting on waiver wires for free that you can have
But also,
just like that.
he has 120 at bats compared to guys that play every day that at 240 at bats. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, we'll see. Obviously, he didn't start right at the beginning of the year, but I think your pitching. I think that's probably been the most surprising thing to me. I liked a lot of your pitchers. I just wasn't sure they were going to hold up. You also didn't have Jared Jones when the season started when we were doing our show, and obviously he's been one of the revelations in baseball this year. So Ragans has been good as expected. Sale has stayed healthy, and that's been a huge factor for you. But Cutter Crawford and I think Jared Jones have really been the difference makers and been that showstopper. And I think that's what's kept you alive. So I would say overall, at this point, near you got to say this is probably a juggernaut.
Oh, wow, I get the juggernaut label. I'm
Yeah,
pretty happy with that. Yeah, but and kind of like I was saying, I mean, this team has some very clear holes. I mean, if I had Ronald Acuna on this team, I mean, it's not even like I
yeah,
traded Acuna. I just lost him for nothing. That's kind of the thing. That's like the best
yep.
player, the number consensus first overall player, and across the board, highest auction value. To lose that player, you can't replace that kind of value. This team has holes. I have Cedric fucking Mullins in his 227 on base percentage in my outfield right now. I have Teoscar or I have Charlie Blackmon out there who's got 2 home runs on the year. He's contributing some steals, some on base percentage, some home runs, some runs. Like I'm just trying to plug holes here, And when we're talking about this team being a juggernaut, and I have David Fry, Charlie Blackmon, and Cedric Mullins in my lineup, like what are we really talking about here? And it's kind of what I was referring to, where we kind of got to lower the bar a little bit about what we expect. Yeah, I hope that the pitching can kind of maintain what it is. We'll see Jerry Salada if it can, but I do like that I have Reynaldo Lopez and Michael King just waiting in the wings. I can kind of play the matchups a
Yeah.
little bit when I need to.
They're starters on most teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think King and Lopez start on almost every other rotation.
yeah.
King's 83 strikeouts. That's probably top 20 in the bigs right now, maybe. So that's pretty solid.
Yeah, 8 wins quality starts. Reynaldo Lopez 7 wins quality starts. He'll go 6 innings with some
And
consistency. So
and we
guys like that.
talked about this too. We talked a little bit about this pre-show. Obviously, it's tough for certain guys in the trade market too because we've talked about a little bit about C contracts and this or that. But obviously, you can maybe trade pitching. You could trade Ronaldo Lopez, but there's also that factor of this guy's never done this ever in his career. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like ever. So like, can you believe in that? He's on Atlanta. Do you think he's doing what he can? I feel like there's a few of those guys this year, these unexpected breakout like players that it's really tough to kind of gauge what to get from them. And it makes it. And then you got guys like Hader that have been struggling, and then finally they're getting it back together. Doval, I mean, look at Doval. You wouldn't have expected that. Your pitching's been great, and these two closers that you came into the season going, I got two of the better closers in baseball, have
Yeah.
been part of your downfall. But at the same time, it hasn't been a downfall because your team's been as good as it has. So
I have Doval and Hader, who I thought were both like top 10 guys.
elite, right?
I'm like
Yeah.
bottom half in saves on the year.
Yeah, and your team's still been as good as it has been when those you would argue were two of your probably surest things you had on your team.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's crazy how it works out.
Yep. All right, next we're gonna go to Chad's team. Since opening day, Chad has only made one trade where he has traded away Zach Littell and gotten back Max Kepler. Really
Woo!
yeah, real big blockbuster there with Max Kepler's 4 home runs, 22 RBIs, and 1 stolen base there, and Zach Littell with his 3.6 ERA and 1.29 WHIP, really making waves with that one. I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a C because it doesn't even register on the Richter
Yeah,
scale there.
it
Uh,
don't even matter. Yeah, it didn't even
yeah.
shake nothing.
I don't know if either of those guys are starters on either team. I guess we'll find out in a sec as we click on Chad's team. So Chad's in first place in head to head. He's in first place in Roto by a few points right now. As I look at Chad's team, it's a little bit incomplete right now. He's had a little bit of injury with losing Kyle Tucker. I mean, adding Kyle Tucker to this lineup really would kind of change my opinion on how it looks. But man, as I look up and down this roster, man, there's a lot of blah here. from Zach Geloff, who's, getting almost close to no counting stat, only 18 runs scored, 13 RBIs. Willie Castro, not really doing a whole lot for you. I guess 4 homers, 7 steals, only 17 RBIs. Cody Bellinger underperforming. Luis Rengifo, 4 home runs, 18 RBIs. Corbin Carroll, blah, 2 homers, 20 RBIs. Max Kepler in his lineup, 4 homers, 24 RBIs. So it's like, this is our first place roto team. I just listed off 5 guys that have less than 5 homers in his lineup. Let's get 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5 guys that have 5 or less homers in his lineup right now. It's really, really kind of underwhelming what his offense looks like right now. And I know he's hurting. I know he's looking to try and trade some pitching for some hitting. He has a lot of pitching. His pitching is really overperformed. I'll let you give your opinion on Chad's roster, and then there's something else I want to say about it, but I'll let you go ahead.
I think obviously from the power department, having Harper with 15, Gorman with 14, and then Tucker, who is coming back this week. So at least that's not a long-term thing, but Tucker will be back with 19. That's obviously very much carrying him. Corbin Carroll's been one of the bigger disappointments in baseball, but it's tough because again, when your team's as good as it has been, 60 and 34, he's cruising right now into a head-to-head playoff spot. And you're first in roto. We talked about this a little bit pre-show. It's really tough. Why trade a superstar player right now? Why trade one of your best players? What incentive does Chad right now have in trading a Bryce Harper? What could a Bryce Harper return look like? What could with Corbin? I mean, why? And again, why trade him?
Well, it's hard to justify when you're like, well, I need pop. Let me trade Bryce
My
Harper.
best, yeah. And who's a good enough team where they can give up 2 quality starters for a return like that? Where is Bryce Harper a keeper next year at $31? I'd fucking say so right now. I mean, why not? He's on pace for 40 bombs, 100 plus. So, and we talked a little bit about this pre-show too. Chad's team is this good in terms of head-to-head in roto. And granted, like you said, there are holes on it. There are some holes on the team. But what's his incentive of trading a Corbin Carroll right now? What value does he get back? Who's sitting there giving super valuable pieces for a Corbin Carroll that at this point certainly doesn't look like a keeper next year? So Chad's just basically, why not just sit on him and hope he turns it around? So Chad's at a really interesting spot where his team is good. I do think his pitching has somewhat overperformed, but I'll tell you what, strikeouts, especially for a team like me, have been hard to come by this year. Chad is absolutely killing it. And I mean, I mentioned in the chat a week or two ago how his team whip, I don't know if it still is, his team whip was under a 1.
Wow, that's impressive.
I mean, his team whip was, I mean, he literally has 4 dudes on his team right now. Suarez, Miller, Glasnow, Gill, that have under a 1 whip. I mean, that's impressive for a reliever, let alone
we would be remiss if we've gone on this far without mentioning the fact that Chad had all 70, perfect 70 roto points in pitching at one point this year. He's half a point away right now because he needs the saves. He needs the final Infinity Stone, which is a 1 save away from being back at 70, a full 70 roto points. But yeah, I mean, annihilating everybody. Innings pitched, first in the league. Saves, tied for first, 29 with Justin. Strikeouts, he has a 70 strikeout lead on the guy in front of him. ERA, he is at 2.96. Dex actually right behind him, 2.97. Tyler in third, me in fourth, and I'm not going to catch him in ERA. Whip way ahead of everybody. And then wins quality starts, he has got 1 win quality start ahead of both me and Tyler. So I mean, we're nipping at the heels. I don't think this is like the pitching staff that we saw from like Peter last year, where he's just kind of far and away, nobody's going to catch him. I don't think anybody's going to catch him in strikeouts, but
but it's one of those things too. Like for a team like me, I've been kind of chasing strikeouts for a long time. I don't really have. I feel like there's a few teams this year and a few pitchers that really aren't averaging a strikeout an inning this year. And for Chad to have this many guys, like Fried got off to that horrible start and everyone is going crazy over it. And look at him; he almost has under a 1 whip with under a 3 ERA. Gill, I mean, 2 of his best moves he's made, Kyle, have been pickups. Gill, he picked up off the waiver wire, and he's maybe the AL Cy Young winner right now. And then Suarez, the closer from San Diego, has 17 saves with a .69 ERA and a .7 whip. Both of those guys he just picked up off waivers.
You know what's going to help is getting 120 strikeouts out of your closer and Mason Miller.
Yeah. I mean, and that's another thing too, is Mason Miller has as many strikeouts as some people who have starters in their rotation have strikeouts.
Yep.
Like he's striking out that many batters. Glasnow again, 116. I think he leads Major League Baseball in strikeouts. So it's just one of those things where Chad, I mean, he's killing it with the save department. Oh, usually if you're pushing in for saves, you're slacking on strikeout. Nope, he's got it all, man. It's going to be really really tough, and I think he's got just enough on offense where, like, where do you see a move for Chad to make? Because it's you're sacrificing something, and it's like, why sacrifice?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What if, I don't know, this is a topic for next week, but what if Chad turns to our friend Dex and packages trades. Chad doesn't need Mason Miller. What if Chad throws Mason Miller and then Caminero and Pico Armstrong or whoever else and for Ryan Helsley and Luis Robert? Is that enough for Luis Robert?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's
I'd
what I'm
have to
thinking.
look at all. I'd have to look at all through of it. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd have to look at it all.
if you're gonna go Mason Miller for $3 A, and then I don't know, Pico Armstrong. I don't think he has any fantasy value for anybody. I
Not
just
right now, no,
he's a
not
good.
right now.
He might be a decent real life player, but I don't think he's ever going to be a fantasy guy you're really going to want. I think he's kind of really overrated. Just because he's a top prospect doesn't necessarily mean he's a top fantasy prospect. It's kind of completely different things. He's a top prospect.
If his stolen
Defense
bases
based
track
on
out,
all that.
if his stolen bases track out and pace over him playing an actual 150 game season, he's going to be a 40-50 steal guy. But you wonder about everything else.
Yeah. But with a 259 on base percentage, I mean, it's basically like Esteury Ruiz, but less stolen bases.
Yeah, and even a guy like Sonny Gray's been 61 innings, 82 strikeouts. It's, I mean, Rodon. None of us, he kind of slid in, got Rodon when you couldn't really get many pitchers for under $20 in the draft. Everyone kind of said we don't trust in Rodon. He was awful. He's
Yep.
going to New York. And for $17, that looks like maybe a keeper next year with how Rodon's pitching.
All right, so here's what I have to say about Chad's team, though. Love the rotation. Max Fried, Luis Heel, Tyler Glasnow, Sonny Gray, Carlos Rodon, Taj Bradley, Reese Olson, Brandon Pfaadt on the bench. How many of those guys are going to be pitching in September?
Oh,
I
we're
mean,
doing that again.
Max Fried has a pretty big injury history the last couple of years. Luis Heel, we
Oh
know
man,
he's down an innings limit. He's not going to throw 200 innings this year. They've already talked about limiting his innings. And when Garrett Cole comes back, maybe they go 6-man, maybe they go something. Tyler Glass now is Glass in his name, has made a Glass. He can't stay healthy. He's done a great job staying healthy. He's pitching 86 innings so far. What is that his like high over the last 86 innings? His high
oh
over
yeah,
like 5 years. He had
probably.
120 last year, then 6, then 88, then
He's only hit
57.
100 once in his career, I think.
Oh yeah. So 2018 he had a 111. So how about that? So 120 was his high pitched last year. Sonny Gray, 34 years old. He's almost never healthy too. Carlos Rodon. Do I need to keep going? All these guys have some pretty big injury risk. And so he's looking to trade some pitching, but I think it could come back to bite him. Now, if he hangs on to Taj Bradley, Reese Olson, and Brandon Pfaadt, guys that can contribute. I don't know how much he wants Brandon Pfaadt and Taj Bradley actually in his lineup. Taj Bradley is
That's insane.
5.17
Yeah.
ERA. Kind of been a little disappointing there, but like he's gonna need some pitching depth because if he trades some of his pitching depth and then down goes Glasnow or Luis Heel, they're sending him down or they're skipping him in the rotation or whatever else. I think that's going to happen. He's not going to get 200 innings out of all these guys. So I think that's just something we need to keep an eye on with Chad. Something he's going to need to monitor. I mean, for now, foot on the gas. He should be doing everything he can to put his chips in the center of the table and go for this thing. Obviously, his team is very, very good. It's excellent. Probably might even be better than mine, but it's just something we need to keep an eye on a little bit as the season kind of goes on and what's
Well,
going to happen with all those pitchers.
and that's a topic you've mentioned a couple times. Obviously, it seems like pitching's been easier to come by this year, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, man, it's you can never have enough pitching. I feel like that's happened so many times in this league, especially with the amount of injuries that have happened this year. Strider obviously went down right away. Cole's been down. I feel like there's been a lot of pitchers that were unexpectedly amazing. Like when we talk about Dane's team and we see Seth Lugo, and we talk about Justin's team, and no one expected Imanaga to do as well as they have. So I think it's almost like unexpected pitching has come from places you didn't obviously anticipated coming from. But I feel like it's also lacking in some of those aces. But it's tough. I mean, it's holding together. But like you said, if he trades one of those pitchers away, I don't know if he's got the depth to replace it.
Yeah, exactly. And if he trades away a pitcher and then one of those pitchers goes down, then what? He doesn't, yeah, he doesn't have the hitting depth to trade. Maybe he's
No.
going to find some buyers. Maybe, Caminero and Pete Crow Armstrong are guys that Pete wants for, some of his guys for Jesus Luzardo, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what Peter's going to get for Luzardo, but that's remains to be seen. Let's go to our
TikTok.
next team, which is Lincecum prematurely, Jordan, the new age Jordan. Made a couple trades, usually pretty active on the trade wire. Looking to make a few more is what it sounds like. Looks like he's made 3 trades since opening day. He
Yeah.
sent
All in
away,
like a 2 week span.
yeah, he sent away Christian Yelich, got back Kerry Carpenter and Heston Kjerstad. I don't know how to say that name. Kjerstad,
Yeah.
something like that. Then he made the trade with me that we kind of talked about earlier. He sent away Seager and Bayo, got back Scherzer, Merrill, and Sanchez. And then he traded away Ryan Mountcastle and Jung Ho Lee and got back a bunch of pitching: Alex Cobb, Renel Blanco, and Tanner Houck. Any of these trades kind of stand out to you, good or bad for Jordan here?
Like I said, we talked about your trade a little bit. We can hit on it a little bit again from his perspective. But the first trade he made, I think, was actually a pretty easy win for him. Now it obviously happened early in the season, but Alex Cobb
Oh, this one
obviously,
here. Okay.
yeah, Alex Cobb has been nothing. But in terms of Blanco and Hugh, he actually got a pretty good return from it. I know Blanco's getting a little in trouble, getting suspended and all that, but Blanco and Hoke Tanner have been a great addition. While Mountcastle and Lee's out for the year. He got hurt, so he's
Yeah.
done. So really, it's just been what Mountcastle has done, and he's done fine. He's on pace for his 30 bombs and close to 100 RBIs. So if that's the return, that's not an awful return. But Blanco and Hook have been, I don't know how to pronounce that. Bryce will probably kill me, but Houck's been a really damn good pitcher this year. Probably one of the top 10.
Stud.
Yeah, 10 in
1.9
base.
ERA, 0.91 whip.
Yeah.
85 innings, 84 strikeouts. And yeah, that's under a strikeout an inning, but he's going so deep into games. Like, it's still 84 strikeouts, 84 strikeouts. Like, the rate doesn't matter. I'd rather have a guy that's 84 strikeouts in 85 innings than 65 strikeouts in 50 innings,
And then Blanco's been almost, great ERA, great whips. So I think Jordan really kind of won this trade. I mean, again, Mountcastle's going to give you your 30 and 100, but I think he wins it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, he went from being a team that has no pitching, really needs pitching, and now he's kind of loaded up. And we'll talk about that when it's team in a little bit. But obviously, Blanco's been pretty solid. He's kind of starting to see some regression a little bit lately, but still, overall numbers are great. And then, Tanner Houck's obviously been one probably a top 5 pitcher in the league so far this year. And all he had to give up was Ryan Mountcastle, where he's first base only. First baseman is deep, and Mountcastle 11 homers, 32 RBIs, 320 on base percentage. I feel like that's not that hard to find, is 11 homers and a 320 on base percentage from a first baseman. Especially being a right-handed hitter in Baltimore. I don't really like that, considering they moved the fences back, and it's just not really a power park anymore for right-handed hitters. So, which kind of sucks being a righty in Camden Yards. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge win there. You have to give him an A+ for that effort. And it's really kind of rounded out his team better than he thought he would. We'll see what he gets out of Max Scherzer. I mean, I guess I'll say it now. His offense is actually kind of hurting now. His offense, which was supposed to be one of the best offenses that we've ever seen out of a team that we talked about in the post-draft pod, it's really not looking all that great. And it's because he traded Mountcastle, he traded Seager, he traded Yelich, and he didn't really get any offense back from any of those guys. And let's go ahead and go into his team now. And it really does lack a little bit of luster here. We'll start with
I didn't love him trading Yelich. Like that trade where he got Kjerstad and Carpenter. It just felt like a why move when Yelich, again, he's not the Yelich 3 years ago when he was winning MVP, or 4 years ago when he was hitting 40, 35 bombs. But Yelich has been a very productive fantasy bat. When we haven't even hit on this yet. It seems like it's really hard to find outfield in this league this year.
Yep.
Like, I feel like a lot of teams are just missing. Outfield is thin, and the fact we have to start 4 of them, I feel like a lot of teams are starting like a really average or below average 3rd or 4th outfielder. Everyone needs outfielders. So to look back at this trade that happened late April, but Yelich would be awesome on this team right now, right? I mean, you'd love to have a Yelich looking at this roster.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the pitching staff. I mean, pitching staff looks really, really solid. I mean, George Kirby, Joe Ryan, Blanco, Tanner Houck, and Christopher Sanchez are his starters. And Christopher Sanchez, the name doesn't really look great, but he's got a 2.71 ERA. The strikeout numbers aren't great, and the WHIP is pretty bad, 1.34. But I mean, the 2.71 ERA will playing for the Phillies. And then his two closers, Clay Holmes and Kirby Yates. I mean, two really solid options there. Clay Holmes has 19 saves and 1.23 ERA. Coming off the bench, he needs Blake Snell to get back and healthy, and then he's got Graham Ashcraft, and some guys that are hurt. I mean, he could use Scherzer to come back, would help a little bit, so he can move Sanchez to the bench. But I don't know what he's going to get out of Alex Cobb and Edward Cabrera, but we'll kind of remains to be seen what'll get out of those guys. But a lot of injury risk here, or a lot of current injury, I guess, injury guys on the bench right now. But the rotation is pretty solid. That's top 5 rotation, maybe even better in the league. But then we go to the lineup and it's like, man, oh wait, this is supposed to be one of our historically great lineups.
Yeah.
And he's got
Yeah.
in his outfield Harrison Bader with 3 home runs and 23 RBIs. And Alec Burleson, 9 home runs, 24 RBIs. And Johnny DeLuca, who's not even playing every day, 2 home runs, only 6 runs scored on the year, 14 RBIs, and a 267 on base percentage. Starting for him, Stephen Kwan, 4 homers, 14 RBIs. And then he's got Jackson Merrill, 3 homers, 23 RBIs in his lineup. Jose Miranda, 6 home runs. So it's like, man,
Yeah.
this is one of the best offense ever. He's got like 5 scrubs in his lineup. So yeah, it's leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, obviously losing Mike Trout sucks. I mean, you should probably move Dalton Varsho in, Johnny DeLuca out, and then maybe you can find a better option at utility instead of DeLuca there. But it's brutal, and you can't replace Mike Trout obviously with his production of what he was putting up. He's basically on a 50 homer pace, but that's what you get with Mike Trout. He's always hurt. So you kind of know that that's part of the risk there. So yeah, I mean, this offense is not sustainable. And I mean, even if Vlad has to get really hot, but I don't think Ohtani and Vlad and Adley is enough to carry him far enough. This offense just isn't good enough. He doesn't have enough good pieces here. So I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what moves he has to make. I'll have to look deeper into what he can do, but yeah, this is it's not he's in 3rd place in head to or 4th place in head to head. In Roto, he is in let's see here. He is in like 8th place in Roto. Yeah. Oh no, he's not. He's fourth place in Roto. But I don't really see the ceiling here of a team that can really make a run right now. Do you?
It's tough because I do think some of his superstars are underperforming, but they're not like doing awful. Like Vlad Guerrero, he's not putting in the power or I mean, he's not even on pace for 100 runs. He's not on pace for 25 home runs.
He
He's
hasn't been
not.
for like 3 years though.
I know he's only had like 2 power years, really, when you look back on it. He only has, but the 383 on base percent. So he's going to put up fine numbers. I mean, he's still on pace for 90 RBIs, so Jazz Chisholm, kind of the same thing. They're not great numbers, but really when you track them all the way through, they're okay. Now there are a lot of weak spots, like you said, Merrill, Bader. Burleson's been okay. DeLuca, you do mention there are a lot of weak spots there, but again, this is another team that's kind of relying on Ohtani, Chisholm, Guerrero, and Rushem to get it done. But compared to what we kind of led this team up to be preseason, and we looked at this, Trout being hurt obviously is the big gap, right? Trout having the start he had, 10 home runs, but I mean, was a Trout injury expected? You can almost are we getting to the point where we can almost say that? I mean,
Yeah.
can we say like that's expected to happen at this point? So that was obviously a huge blow. But you're right, there are holes here. If for some reason another injury happens, it's red flag danger territory. But with the head to head record he's built up right now, he's looking really solid. The pitching has looked really
Maybe a
solid. But
playoff
again,
team, yeah, for sure.
playoff team for sure. Do you think this pitching holds up? Do you think Tanner Hook? Do you think Blanco? I know you've been a Joe Ryan guy in the past. George Kirby's doing fine again. Do you think this pitching holds up? I don't
Um,
know.
I think I'd have to say probably not because I think that Blanco, I think hitters will kind of start to figure him out. I don't know. I don't. He doesn't really have like obviously he's a 30-year-old making his debut. Like it's not like he has
Right.
wicked nasty stuff that guys aren't gonna be able to hit. Like I think guys will catch on. He's got under strikeout an inning, and I think even Christopher Sanchez, the 2.71 ERA isn't sustainable when you have a 1.34 WHIP. I think the WHIP is more indicative of the ERA than the ERA indicative of the WHIP. And a lot of these guys are low strikeout guys. All these guys are below a
Yeah, they
strikeout.
are. Yeah.
Kirby below strikeout an inning. Blanco below strikeout an inning. Clay Holmes exact
Ryan's the only
strikeout
one.
an inning. Hauk below strikeout an inning. But I talked about Hauk. He's got 84 strikeouts still. Sanchez below strikeout inning on 59 strikeouts. So, and Blake Snell can't stay on the field either. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that there
So
might
from
be.
what I'm hearing, from what I'm hearing, you would say Jordan's team, based on what I've heard you say about his lineup, based on what I've heard you say about his pitching, you would almost say his team is vastly overperforming.
Yeah, I would say so. And I don't, is Mike Trout going to come back the next couple weeks? It doesn't sound like it. Let's see. He's not been on the
Late
elliptical. Okay,
July.
good for Mike
Yeah.
Trout. He's on the elliptical. Good for him. So yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, sure. He lost Mike Trout, and that sucks for him. But like, we've all had injuries too. Like I lost Royce Lewis and Ronald Acuna, and I'll make excuses. I can't say I won't make excuses. I'll make excuses, but I'm still up there in second place in both. So injuries happen. You got to kind of be prepared. You got to build that depth up.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And I don't really. It's not like I see a lot of A contracts here that he can trade to some rebuilding teams or.
Having Yelich would be nice.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Christian Yelich would be a nice piece on this team. It's about what he could use, but yeah, I think he'll just kind of be hovering around the fourth, fifth place team unless he can kind of swindle somebody and pull off some kind of trade. And this, maybe he can trade a Max Scherzer and Edward Cabrera for some pieces, if for Luis Robert or for Austin Riley or whoever else is selling, to Justin for some of his pieces.
And like you said, he is the fourth place roto team. I mean, he has 91 and a half roto points. So it's not like, I mean, his team's been very, very good. I mean, it has been. It's been
I
very,
don't.
very good. It's just he's just very average. You don't see when you look at my roto score, I'm dominant in a lot of hitting categories, but I'm below average in others. He is not really when you look at his roto score, because what's an average roto score on a category? 7, right? Out of
Yeah.
14 teams, 7. He's 7.5 in runs. He's 8 and but I mean, other than that, he is 7 or higher on every single category. So he does not have like a massive weakness. And you could say, okay, his strength is OBP and saves. But other than that, he's not, 11 or so it's really weird looking at his team. Is he the only team in the league? Yeah, I think he's the only team in the league that is a 7 or higher on every single category.
Yeah. I mean, the
Because even
closest
Chad's
would
not.
be Chad. Yeah, Chad is below average in runs and RBIs. I'm below average in saves. So, yeah, it's
I mean, you're close. I mean, you can almost argue you're pretty much right there with saves and others. I mean, you're pretty much there. But I mean, Jordan is, you could almost say the epitome of like a very good above average team. I mean, not great, but not average, I would say.
Yeah, it's a slightly above blah team is kind of what this is. So,
Yeah.
we'll see. I don't know how many moves there are to be made. I'm sure he's going to be busy. He'll make some moves before the deadline. We'll see kind of how he shakes it up. But yeah, I wonder if he ever considers moving Otani. But again, who's got the depth to to really make to put chips in for Otani. And
Yeah.
I think the reason why he has 91 roto points isn't really an indictment on his team. I think it's just you called my team a juggernaut. I don't think we have any juggernauts because we've already gone through our top teams, myself and Chad included in roto, and like both those teams have holes. Like we all have holes. So
Yeah. At the same time, though,
I think it's his 91 roto points is just an indictment of the overall fantasy landscape being a little bit different, hitters being down, pitchers being up, and it just being slightly about like if he had this team and these stats last year, he'd probably be in like 8th place. But
yeah.
it's this year, it's just a different landscape, so it just is what it is.
I will say this, and I know we're not doing power rankings and all that, but I do think in our league there is a very obvious like bottom 4 and top 4, though. You know what I mean? And like I mean, I think we can
Is he
argue like
top
who's
4?
I maybe not even a top 4. I think obvious top 2 then, because I do think you could even say like 4 and 5 are tough, but I think there's a big muddled ground between like 5 and 10. But I think the top 2 or 3 and the bottom 3 or 4 are very, very obvious. Where if you can almost count, like you said earlier, with the whole our teams tanking this and that, when you can count almost 4 teams out of the race right now, you're talking 10 teams vying for 6 spots.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. There's not a juggernaut. Oh my God, this team is going to wreck every team, kind of like Chad's last year, even though Chad's doing remarkable again. But I also feel like there are some really bad teams, though, like really bad teams.
Yeah.
So it kind of it makes it tough.
Yeah. Speaking of 4 and 5 in the power rankings, eventually, I'm assuming that's about where you have your team, who's sitting right now at 5th place in a head-to-head. In Roto, you are at 5th places. No, where are you at? Yeah, fifth place as well. Fifth place head to head, fifth place in Roto. So
Heck
kind of
yeah.
on middle of the stack, being pretty unremarkable, but pretty solid nonetheless. So if we look at some of the trades you've made, giving up Walker Bueller, Christopher Morel for Jose Ramirez, who has gone on to hit 18 home runs, 62 RBIs, 10 steals, and a 336 on base percentage. Holy smokes. Got traded in two nickels and got like $100 bill there. And then
Morel's been good though. Morel's been solid, and
yeah, yeah, that's why the Cubs are winning so many games, is how good Morel's been. And
yeah.
then trading away Kyle Finnegan and Yoshida, getting back Wilson Contreras and Kyle Harrison. So, I mean, not a whole lot needs to be said about what your return from the Jose Ramirez trade. I mean, you gave up two B players, not contract wise, but B level players, got back an A plus, got a superstar. Solid trade. You get an A plus for that. Because Walker Buehler's been pretty bad, and Christopher Morel has been remarkably average with his 12 homers, 39 RBIs, and a 315 on base percentage, 6 steals. And then this trade here, giving away Finnegan, who's you've argued for, scream from the mountaintops how good he is with his 1.7
Yeah.
ERA, and
Does he lead the league in saves? I don't know. I mean, that's got to be close, right?
Helsley's got 20, but he's got
Okay.
18. He's been pretty solid. Yeah, I mean, probably top 5 closer here and what he's done so far this year.
Easy.
Arguments there. And you got back Kyle Harrison, who 4.18 ERA, 1.39 whip, under a strikeout an inning. And Wilson Contreras might help you down the road. I know you kind of got a little bit of a hole at catcher. The problem with Wilson Contreras is he had a forearm injury. And we saw when it's forearm and wrist stuff,
Oh
those
yeah,
guys
that hurt.
are the same when they get back. Same with the Chris Bryant a couple of years ago when he had the wrist injuries. It just saps the power. It takes him a while to get back. So
And he
I'm
was having
really
a really good year before that too. Before
he
he got
was
hurt, I mean, I think
he was
he was
playing
having a good year.
having a normal Wilson Contreras year. Yeah, we'll see if he can kind of regain his form when he comes back. You kind of need him to. But I think you kind of get like maybe a C minus here. I think Finnegan will probably be the best player in the deal. I don't know if Harrison is he still on your roster? Have you dropped him yet?
Oh no, he's probably a keeper for me. I like Harrison a lot moving forward. Oh
Well, he's gonna have to perform a lot better than he is if you're gonna
yeah,
keep him.
that's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think overall you get an A plus for the first trade. For the second trade, I'm gonna give you like a C minus. I just don't know if you're gonna get really any production out of Harrison and Contreras that's gonna be worthy of starting.
Yeah,
Contreras,
I didn't have a whole lot of catcher at the time, and I had 3 closers, and I knew I had to get rid of one of them at the time because I was rocking a lot of closers, so it just made sense for me at the time to do it. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So hopefully you can get Patrick Bailey and Mitch Garver out of your lineup there. So here we have Bailey, Lowe, Albies, Westberg, De La Cruz, Ellie has been a godsend for you this year. Spencer Steer, Alvarez, Palacios, Seiya Suzuki, J Ram, and Bryson Stott. We know you've been trying to trade some infielders to try and get some outfield and pitching help. The pitching staff is Kyle Harrison, Gray Rod, Justin Steele, Verlander, Logan Webb, Andrew Abbott, and Evan Phillips. So, I mean, your closers have kind of led you. Ellie's kind of led you there. So you're a little bit top heavy with some of those guys. J Ram, Bryson Stott. You have the stars, but again, this is another roster that kind of has some guys in the lineup. Nathan Lowe's underperforming. Patrick Bailey, a catcher. You're not getting a whole lot from him. Ozzie Albies, only 4 home runs. Lowe only has 2 home runs. Spencer Steer's been decent. 40 RBIs is actually pretty impressive. 11 stolen bases, 341 on base percentage. Pretty solid. Richie Palacios, 4 homers, 12 RBIs, and 150 at bats. Seiya Suzuki started off blazing hot and has not been good ever since coming back from injury. Not really been so good. But I think if you can find a trade for one of these infielders here, whether it's one of your underperforming or overperforming guys, I think the roster is going to kind of round out a lot better. You're going to get Trey Turner back at some point. And
He
then
was on fire too. I mean, I know every team deals with injuries, so I'm not trying to play a little violin here, but I don't think there's ever been a time where I don't at least have 2 or 3 like big names out. Between having Senga out all year, Trey Turner out. I know I'm talking to a dude that
Senga
just
doesn't
lost
count because he was injured when you drafted him. You can't
Oh no,
fault
he
him
wasn't
for
injured when I
not being
drafted him.
that
He was
bad.
injured when I decided to keep him.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm talking to a dude that lost Acuna, so I guess I can't really tear up too much. But I've just
How
never
many minutes do you need
had
to
a full
wax
crew.
about
It's
how
been
good
tough.
Ellie did? What's that? Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, Ellie's been great. To think someone said he might be in the minor leagues this year. It's just crazy to me. But Ellie's been great. Ellie's been great. I've loved every bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think last year I lived and died on picking up C contracts, and I think Westberg's obviously been a really big pickup for me. He's on pace for high 20 home runs, 100 RBIs type stuff. So I think he's been big. But yeah, like I've said in the chat, I need a little bit of outfield help, maybe a little bit of pitching help, a little bit of pitching depth there. All year I've kind of been chasing strikeouts. I don't really have a guy that just can go out there and I know can get strikeouts. Grayson Rodriguez is probably the closest thing, and he missed a couple weeks again due to injury. So that's been a little tough. So I don't really have like that for sure strikeout guy, which I think is really is the big weakness.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that a little bit. Having Kenley Jansen on the bench is a little bit interesting. You got Webb, and I guess you're going with the six starter approach there, but try and supplement the little bit of strikeouts there. I could kind of understand that a little bit. But
I
you still
rocked
got
three
three closers.
closers for probably the first month, I think. So
Yes.
I had to catch up a little bit, which was the plan. I knew I was gonna have to do that. I just
Is
because
that
I had so
affecting
many.
you head to head?
No, not too much because head to head I was all right in because my closers were great. It was Foley, Phillips, and Jansen's and Finnegan really. So they were doing well. It was just I knew I had so many starters out early and on the injured list that I rocked. I think I rocked a three closer approach for the first 4 or 5 matchups. I think I
Yeah.
did. Yeah. So I'm kind of playing a little bit of catch up in K's and then throwing the fact I don't really have K guys right now to begin with. It's kind of put me in a little bit of a hole, at least roto wise. But head to head wise, this is probably the best start I've ever had in the league's history because usually I'm playing catch up.
Yeah.
So I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, I think this team is probably, if Jordan's team is overperforming, this team is certainly underperforming with what you expect out of Nate Lowe and Ozzy Albies and some of these and even Jordan Alvarez. I think we'd expect a little bit more production out of him. I guess he's kind of coming around 13 homers, 33 RBIs, but I mean, we expect him to kind of be on a 40 homer pace, and he hasn't really played like that.
Yeah.
He's kind of maybe a little bit of the Anthony Rizzo effect where he's not going to go and do it loudly, but you're just going to look down. He's going to have 30 home runs and 100 RBIs like Rizzo always did. But yeah, I know that you're going to have a few trades that you're going to make. I think, yeah, a pitcher here. The thing I will say is I think the context was that wouldn't surprise me so much if Ellie was in the minors. And if we look at the stats, if we ignore stolen bases, which is the stat that like teams don't really care about, if I was a team, I don't really care how many bases my guys steal. Over the last 30 days, only 3 homers,
Oh, okay. Here we
RBIs,
go.
and a
Here
276
we go.
on base percentage. The only difference too then is like at the time I thought the Reds would be like a lot better with all their infielders that they had. Like they had like so many good infielders that I thought everyone would be.
McLean got hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, but McLean is hurt, and then what's his name is suspended 80 games, so they don't have anybody to take his spot. But like I said, if those guys had overperformed, and then they looked and like we're like, well, Ellie's got a 276 on base percentage and only 3 home runs, and he's striking out 40% of the time. I could see it, but I'm not. They're not sending him down. But if they got to a point where they're like, we have 6 infielders that all deserve playing time, and he's striking out way more than everybody else, I could see it. But we're definitely not at that point right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a team that we're gonna see probably make a pretty big push in Roto, pretty big push in head to head, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of moves you can kind of shake up the roster with and see kind of where you end up.
And Bryson Stott was another one. I mean, he's been. You look at his past 30 days, nothing insane, but I mean, 13 runs, 10 steal. That was a guy that he was one of the last like kind of good players in the draft, and I just threw 19 at him, and that was one of the
I
ones where
thought
I'm
you
like,
big
man,
time overpaid for him, but yeah, 18 steals.
yeah, I'm like, I overpaid for him. I'm like, God, but I mean, yeah, he's on pace for 40 steals. He's on pace for 80 plus runs, 80 plus RBIs. So, and that's why I've tried. I mean, I'm not trying to make a trade market here, but I've been trying to trade away either like a Westberg or a Stott, and they've been putting up good years. So I'm not trying to trade away scrubs, but no one's seemed to quite take the negotiations yet. So we'll see.
Yeah, nobody's taking the bait.
And again, I think a lot of it is outfielders, man. I feel like everybody just like nobody wants to give an outfielder because now, oh, I have an outfield hole and it might be a second hole. So I think everybody's just so thin at outfielders where they almost seem like gold right now. It seems like every year there's a little bit of difference in what, like you said, that's fantasy landscape. And this year it really seems like every team needs outfielders.
Yeah. I know I just noticed is how there's a massive correlation between alphabetical order and our current head-to-head standings.
Is that really?
Yeah, it's Beantown Boys, Burns and IPV, Chad, Linscomb, Eric, Gotham City Rogues. And if we look at the team roster page in alphabetical order, it's Beantown Boys, Burns and IPV, Chad, Krim is not in alphabetical order, and then Erock, all that down there. But a little bit of correlation, a little bit of a positive correlation and what's our variance there. They're less variance, I guess you could say. Next team,
And I know we're not. And I was gonna say I know we're not looking at preseason trades, but also again, this was a little bit to do with Gunner's price. But don't forget, I traded Gunnar Henderson straight up for Morel in the offseason too,
wow,
and that
that's
was a big one.
probably what you wouldn't have had Stott then, though. I mean, you obviously would have preferred
Right,
Anderson, but like that extra money is probably what freed you up to
right.
spend money on Stott, who's production wise, Morel and Stott has probably been close to what you got out of Henderson.
Yeah,
All right, next we have Jay's team. The Jays team who nobody believes in and then kind of ends up
yeah.
first place every year. Has made a few moves, actually quite a few moves. Look at all these moves since the start of the year.
He's made
One,
the most trades out of
two,
anyone in the
4,
league
5, 6,
this year.
7. Yeah. Hey, he sends out trade offers, everybody but me. He doesn't want to trade with me, but I hear there's been a barrage in people's inboxes is what I hear from Jay. So kind of a lot to go through here. First off, we have the trade we already mentioned, which was the couple of these we already mentioned actually. He traded away Mountcastle, or he traded away Cobb, Blanco, Hauk, got back Mountcastle and Jung Ho Lee. He's gonna have to get like a D on this one here. I guess he had a big depth of pitching, so he felt comfortable making this move. But to get back only Mountcastle, who's like an
Yeah.
okay performer, it's definitely not paying dividends for him. Do you have anything else you want to add to that on Jay's side for that?
No, yeah, like you said, we talked about this one earlier. Yeah, Mountcastle is going to get you the 30 and 100. It's really tough to pass up the pitching that was returned in Hawk and Blanco though. So overall, I'd say like a D plus, yeah, C minus D plus, because I think, I mean, you hit it on the head earlier. Having a great first baseman is awesome, but I feel like it's also one of the easier positions to find. I'm going to get a guy that has 25 or 30 home runs and 80, 90 RBI. I just feel like it's a lot easier to find that than to find those two
Yeah, I mean,
valuable
like I have
pitchers.
I have Rizzo and Ty France on my bench who are like 90% of this production anyway.
Yeah.
So, not that really hard to fill. Next we have the trade that we already talked about with the Beantown boys, which is he gave up Logan Gilbert and Lodolo, got back Justin Turner, Hunter Green, and Pablo Lopez. This has not worked out for him because Pablo Lopez has been brutal and Logan Gilbert and Lodolo have pitched very well. So he's going to get another D for this one. I'm having deja vu of hating all of his trades and them not working out and then us looking down and he's in the playoffs again.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. I mean, again, it's still early in the season, and a lot of people are still waiting for people to pan out. Who knows? Pablo Lopez is a huge question mark. I don't know what to expect from him. If Pablo Lopez again turns it around these last 3 months, this could very well turn on its head and be a trade that Jay wins. Because Hunter Green is pitching the best baseball of his career. I think we've been waiting for years for Hunter Green. The strikeouts were always there, but we've been waiting for like the ERA and the WHIP to be a little bit better. Hunter Green's pitching the best year of his career. He just needs Lopez to turn it around, and this trade looks all right. But as of right now, like you said, Gilbert
Sure.
and Lodolo are killing Lopez Green on the return right now. So I would say D plus as of right now.
Yep. Then he was on the receiving end of Christian Yelich, where he acquired Christian Yelich and got
Good
rid of
one.
Gary Carpenter and Hessen Kershad.
Easy
Uh,
W.
Yep, easy W there. I'll give him an A for that one. Then he gave up Jameson Tyone, got back Mitchell Parker and Jose Quintana. This is one of those I'm not familiar with your game. Is Quintana doing anything worth a damn? 5.29 ERA. No, he sucks. Mitchell Parker, I know he's pitched pretty well. 3.47 ERA, 1.05 WHIP, and 45 strikeouts and 57
You could
innings.
argue him and Tyon have almost thrown. Him and Tyon almost have identical stats. I mean, Parker and Tyon are almost identical. So as of right now, it's you can argue a wash, but I don't even know their contract statuses at this point.
Yeah.
So
I
I
don't think
mean,
any of them are keepers. I know Parker was picked up. Maybe Tyone's still on an A contract. Let's see here.
because if that's the case, then I guess you could say Krim won it. But as of right now, Parker and Tyon stats are almost so identical. It's
No, he was dropped and claimed. So Tyone
yeah.
is.
So really, I almost look at this point. There's not really much kind of.
Yep, exactly. Now I just give it a C. Both
Yeah.
none of those players have really played all that well. Then he gave up Christian Yelich and got back
Yeah.
Castellanos
This
and
was an
Eric.
interesting one.
It sure is because Yelich has outperformed Castellanos, and Jay is still pretty high on Nick Castellanos despite his 2.275 on base percentage, 9 homers, 29 RBIs, 34 runs scored. So the runs scored are still there, 34 runs because he's hitting that Phillies lineup. You're not really getting any speed. 1 stolen base out of Castellanos, 2 caught stealing. So I don't know how much speed you're going to get there. And Eric Fetty has been kind of a revelation. Went to Korea, came back and has pitched kind of well over the last 30 days, 3.68 ERA,
It's
1.2.
really well, yeah.
And on the year, 3.27 ERA, 1.18 whip. 73 strikeouts and 74 innings. 5 quality starts. I don't know how many wins quality starts it is, but he's been pretty decent in spots for the White Sox there. So maybe is it just kind of like a win-win? Each team gets something that they're looking for, and I'll give Jay like a B plus on that.
Yeah, I don't hate it. It's one of the ones that again, it's going to be really interesting to see how it looks in September. Does Castellanos have in that lineup, which you think he probably could, right? I would buy into this Castellanos stock more than I push away from it just because of the lineup he's in. So if Castellanos still ends up with 30 homers, 90 RBIs, and then you throw in, like you said, the Fetty revelation that he's gone through. Who knows if it continues? He's a White Sox. We'll see. But overall, yeah, I'd say BB plus on that. But Yelich has still been really damn good. So for some reason, Fetty falls off, which he's prone to do, or Castellanos continues to kind of play like he has. This could very well be a win for Chris.
Yep. And yeah, I agree. And then the Kepler Littell deal, that's kind of whatever. And then the acquiring Hector Neris for Zach Littell, I think it's kind of like probably a win. It's a B. I mean, Neris is the closer for the Cubs right now. It's pretty clear they're not really splitting that time with
Right.
anybody. So I mean, that's
And
pretty
Littell
solid.
hasn't
Neris
been amazing.
hasn't been great. Actually, better than expected. He's got a 1.45 WHIP, but only a 2.63 ERA. In that time, 9 saves if he needed a second closer. It's fine. You didn't really have to give up much to get him. So, I mean, I think that's probably a win. I'd give it an A. Zach Littell
Well,
isn't really all that good. He isn't really providing much. And
an underrated stat too. Neris is 6-0 on the year. He's that matches his career like high. So like he's thrown in 6 wins quality starts just on the low there as well. So something to think about. Not something you really can predict or anticipate, but I mean it's there. So
yeah, so we look up and down the roster of Jay, and there's a lot of underperforming. It looks like, which is strange. I'm going to sound very hypocritical here. So Chris, you're going to like this, but this is strange because like this is a roster full of underperformers. But I don't know why that makes sense because we were so low on his team to start the year, having him 13th in the power rankings. Then we're like, well, his team has underperformed, but he still sits here in 6th place, and it looks like he has some aggression coming his way in the positive direction. Carlos Correa has been really bad. Arenado's been bad. I think he'll get a little bit better. Rosarena has been brutal, and I think he'll get a little bit better. Castellanos has been bad. I think he'll get a little bit better. Marte's been pretty solid. And then Ozuna, holy shit, 18 homers, 55 RBIs,
yeah,
385 on base percentage.
crazy.
I don't love the pitching right now. I think he needs to improve on the pitching, and we'll kind of see what he can do. He'll make a few more trades, I assume, but yeah, I mean, I think the offense, I might like this offense better than Jay's offense.
This is a top 5 offense, I think. And I don't want to just completely go off names because, like you said, some of these guys are struggling. I mean, Arenado's not even on pace for 20 home runs. Correa's not even on pace for 20 home runs. So you are even a Rosarena, like you said, a little bit of a down year home run wise and steal wise, I believe. Only 7 steals. So 288 on base percentage. I don't want to say he's almost non-startable, but damn, that's tough.
Yeah, for what the outfield landscape is, he's startable. But
yes,
he's not helping his team.
No, he's not very much. And then, like I said, Reynolds, we've seen even better of him in the past. So it's weird to think. I do think. I mean, look at these names though: Real Muto, Altuve, Arenado, Correa, Casti. These are big names. So I really think this is a top 5 offense. I think it's there. And like you said, this is with a lot of these guys not performing very well. We got. I mean, if he didn't have Ozuna on this offense right now, putting the season he had together, he could be in danger trouble because Jordan Wright or Jay right now is 49 and 44 in head-to-head. So he's above 500. He's hanging tight. We both did not like his team coming into the year, but it's really holding true. He's holding it well together. But I agree with you on the pitching. If Pablo Lopez does not get it going, he needs Pablo Lopez to get it going because I don't trust BB, Cortez, Fetty, and Green the rest of the way. I just can't. I can't. I look at those 4 names, and although they've all pitched pretty well, none of them amazing, but all pretty dang well, I just don't see that continuing the rest of the way personally. So I think he's a little bit in trouble there. But overall, I like Jay's team. It's definitely it would give me a little bit of scare in the playoffs if I had to go against that offense.
Always does.
Yeah. Yep.
It always scares us. We never really like it, and then we get to playoff time. We're like, oh, I kind of don't want to face Jay's team.
Yeah.
And so today, like these guys are all pitching well. His rotation's pitching well right now. You got the knuckleballer and Matt Waldron down there. He's
Yeah.
got he's made 100 drops this year. He's always adding and turning and burning guys, and the lineup's got a lot of pop to it. So I don't know how, I'm trying to get you saw the offer I sent over to him to try and get him Devers and trying to buy low on Rosarena and Castellanos. So we'll see if maybe we modify that. I sent him a message earlier about modifying that, so we'll see. Maybe we'll try and work something out. But yeah, I mean it's I think he's kind of lurking right now, but it could kind of go one way or the other, and maybe it ends up being something where his roster looks a lot different. From a couple days from now or a couple months from now, we'll see. Next in our head-to-head standings will be Crim's crew in 7th place. Crimmy has Crim been a little quiet on the trade front this year? I mean, he hasn't traded everybody on his roster twice over by now, so it's
Not yet.
kind of a surprise. So he started the year acquiring Mookie Betts. I'm sure he has no regrets about acquiring Mookie Betts, regardless on how well Garcia and Devers have played since then. I mean, he's at the end of the day, he's got Mookie. From his standpoint, do you think that he's still going to get a positive grade for that?
The trade again, it's tough because really when you do look at Garcia's numbers, I mean Mullins has been really, really tough. But again, in this outfielders market, I mean, it is what it is. I guess there could be worse. It's hard to find, but that Garcia Devers combo, I mean, Whitlock and France, we can almost throw to the side at this point, right? I mean, he doesn't even have France on his roster. So if you look at it from just a Mookie Betts for Devers and Garcia right now, you could almost argue that Garcia Devers has been a better return.
Mm-hmm.
So I think again, time will tell. We're in June. Mookie Betts could go out there and still have an MVP year, but and he still played great. But the last 30 days, not as much pop. He's not on pace for a ton of home runs, this and that. So still on pace for like 120 runs. But
Yeah.
overall, I'd say it's kind of a wash right now. I really do. I think it's kind of fair down the middle at this point.
Yeah. And then we have the kind of wash trade of the Tyone and Parker
Yeah.
trade that we talked about. He gave up Marcus, or he gave up.
This one's confusing. Yeah,
Yeah, he gave up
because of the way we had to fix it, or you had to fix
Yeah,
it.
so he gave up Sandy Alcantara and Jason Dominguez for Marcus Stroman. Marcus Stroman, who is pitching well, carrying a 3.04 ERA and a 1.24 WHIP. He has struck out 57 batters in 74 innings. And I'm talking to, I think, Marcus Stroman's biggest fan, Eric. What do you think of this trade?
Again, I'm trying to remember basically who's who on this one. So Stroman goes to Krim.
Yep. And Alcantara and Dominguez go to Dex.
Okay, that's it. Okay, Alcantara. Um, it's tough because what do we really know about Dominguez and Alcantara? I really, at the end of the day, I like this trade for both because I think Alcantara, we've seen what he can do. Dominguez could be, if you just stash him at a cheap price, whatever. It's a good move for Krim because he needed a good starter in Stroman. So really, with Dex where he's at in this situation, I can't really say it's been awful. Stroman again is not a strikeout guy, so if that ERA and that WHIP get any higher, it makes it very hard for him to become fantasy relevant. But overall, I actually do just kind of like it for both because I don't think Stroman's like the powerhouse fantasy guy, and Dex might have gotten a nice little piece. And I'll take Alcantara over Stroman in most cases. I know he was awful for you last year. You probably wanted to bash your head in with how he performed, but I still got faith in him.
Yeah, he was the one I held on to all the wrong guys last year. Held on to Sandy Alcantara when I should have, and then traded Spencer Strider when I probably should have done the opposite and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to watch all that. I don't love this deal at all. For Krim. I think he gave up way too much. Stroman, I mean, if you want to look at Stroman and be like, hey, it's a 3.0 ERA and he's got 6 quality starts and he's doing all that, but like he's also not gonna have a good whip because he's more of a ground ball pitcher and he's not gonna strike out a lot of guys, and so he's not a top 20 pitcher. And so what you're giving up in Sandy, I just thought that there was probably going to be better offers out there and what other teams might have to offer. I mean, if I'm Justin, I don't know, would Justin have traded Castillo for a $4 Sandy Alcantara and Jason Dominguez? Like I probably would have, done that now that he's kind of a seller. But if he, needed the pitcher,
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
I think that I think he could have got a better pitching better pitcher for those two assets there. So we'll see what Jason Dominguez ends up turning into. He still hasn't really cracked the major league roster much yet. He's got 31 at bats last year, I think late in the year. Came on strong, but then kind of fizzled in his 9 games. I think he hit like what 2 home runs in his like
Yeah.
debut, something like that. But 4 home runs in his first 31 at bats is really solid. So, but now he's got Judge and Stanton and
And he's still so young. He might not even see the
him.
bigs at all this year. I mean, he really might.
Yeah,
He might
working his
not
way
see the
back from
bigs at all.
injury, but he's got so much ceiling. So I don't know. I mean, I think that Dominguez is a better asset than Pico Armstrong is.
Yeah, I would say so right now. Yeah, probably.
We've seen what he can be as a hitter. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Even though Pico Armstrong's getting more playing time right now, I'd rather have Dominguez than PCA. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if he looks at it and being like, well, this is what I offered. I needed a pitcher. I got a pitcher back and it helped me. And that's the end of the day. And I guess that's what it is. So, I mean, I guess I'll give it a C. I mean, his team got better, but I just think he could have he could have aimed a little bit higher with the pitcher in the return there.
Right. I agree. Yep.
So let's look at Crim's crew here. What's your takeaway from Crim's crew?
Again, he's really very similar in a spot to Jay. They're both, I think, similar-ish in roto score. They're both very similar-ish in head-to-head in terms of win-loss right now. I think there is a lot more holes on Crim's team when you're literally comparing these rosters almost to the team we just came from to now. Crim obviously has the big superstars in Betts, Bichette, and then after that, there's a lot of holes. I mean, Santander's got the bombs. Paredes has done pretty well, honestly, for him. Bomb with the RBIs. I mean, dude's on pace for almost 120 ribbies, which is awesome. The power's certainly not there.
Yeah.
The runs are
weird.
But, I mean, yeah, but the RBIs are insane. So overall, Crim's team's tough to gauge, but I do like Crim's pitching a shit ton more than I like Jay's.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of teams in this league, especially, and I know we're not doing power rankings right now, but when we talk next week, teams like 5 or 6-ish through 10, there's like either do you like this team's pitching more or do you like this team's hitting more? Do you like this team's pitching? And this is a case of I like Crim's pitching a heck of a lot more, but he's got a lot more holes on offense. I mean, again, we talk about teams needing outfielders. He's starting Frelick, who's got 200 at bats, an awful stat line. Friedel, I know, had just gotten going, and honestly, in 60 at bats, that's actually a pretty good stat line for Friedel. But Caballero, you're starting because he's stealing bases. That's the only reason you're starting him. Vientos from the Mets, it's not a whole lot of it's tough. So this is really when you get in that muddled ground of what do you like more. But overall, I do like Crim's team. I would like to see him get one more kind of big bat to kind of feel maybe again Dexter's selling. I think
What's he giving up for a big bat?
I would say
I don't see any real assets he can move here to get a big bat.
Yeah, it's tough because Muncy does come back soon, which would be kind of a biggish bat coming back for him. But and again, I think that's why there's not been a ton of trades this year, is because if a team's giving up and they're looking for keepers in return, what team's giving up keeper? If players are doing well and they're keepers, why are you trading them? So again, it makes it a tough situation. So
like, I don't see an asset here he can give up for Luis Robert.
No, not really.
I mean Paredes, but that doesn't really. That's like kind of like a wash.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, could you argue Kikuchi just because of the price savings, $2 or $7 next year, and he's had a good track record lately? I don't know. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
there's nothing obvious. Yeah,
so,
Means. If you traded Means and Kikuchi, maybe I don't know.
But, I mean, what should he look to undo the Betts trade and retrade back? Mookie Betts for Devers and a piece.
I don't know about that either, because again, I think his outfield's already in shambles.
That's valid, just like everybody else's.
And that's what I'm saying, just like everybody else's. So I just don't think he can afford that right now. I think he's missing a little bit of pop in his lineup. He's got Santander, thankfully, but it's just a tough one because we're looking at a lot of teams that are right around 500. He's fighting for a playoff spot right now. He doesn't have one. He's right there along with some of these other teams. Obvious holes, but like you said, what do you trade to fix those holes?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a lot of teams are at right now. I think we're waiting for a few more teams to almost throw in the towel before they start giving up their pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I'm not as high on this pitching staff as you are. I don't think Barrios is that good anymore. I think I do really like Bradish Nola a lot. I think Stroman, yeah, and Kikuchi are going to carry high whips, which means they're going to give up a lot more base runners, more run potential. Simeon Woods Richardson, I don't really know a whole lot about him, but I don't think that he's going to be that big of a contributor. I don't expect him to carry a 2.84 ERA that much further. And I don't really see a whole lot of guys on his bench that he can just kind of plug and play and expect production out of. So I'm not as high in this pitching as you are. And the lineup I think is decent. I think it's about middle of the pack. But definitely some holes. I think that I think he's just a middle of the pack team right now. I think he's going to kind of be in purgatory. I think he's the Chicago Bulls is about what he is. He's
Yeah.
doesn't really have the chips to push in for a superstar to really improve. And I don't think he's bad. I think he's got a decent lineup, a decent pitching staff, but I don't think it's top four in either of those departments.
Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah, holes that aren't easily fixable. And again, another case of a superstar player not performing well. Bo Bichette. I mean, what the hell is he doing this year? You
Yeah.
know, this
Nothing
is
is
just
what he's
another
doing.
case of a. And again, if you're Krim, do you trade Bo Bichette? Who is Dexter taking? Who's keeping him right now at $29? Not a single soul. So it makes it really hard to kind of do that. You almost I feel like there's a lot of teams that almost just have to kind of like sit and wait for their guys to turn it around because they can't. There's not really a move that makes sense without sacrificing too much.
Mhm. Yeah. Next we have Dane's group. Dane, I thought he'd be a little more active on the trade wire, but he's only made one trade since opening day where trade he made with you. He acquired Kyle Finnegan and Yoshida, traded away Kyle Harrison and Wilson Contreras. I think it's gonna
Right.
be a good trade for him. Finnegan's been a really solid contributor for him.
Exactly what he needed too. He had like no saves at the time. So
Yeah, I think he's sold high on Wilson Contreras and Kyle Harrison, and kind of since then they haven't really played that well. Last 30 days, Kyle Harrison has a 5.88 ERA and a 1.7 WHIP. So I think he traded those guys just the right time and got back a really solid closer. So I'm gonna give him an A for that.
yeah,
As we kind
did a good
of
job.
turn over to his roster here, he's got a lot of underperformers on his roster as well. I mean, we might as well just start with Matt Olson and O'Neill Cruz. We were expecting a lot more out of those guys, but only 9 homers, 34 RBIs out of Matt Olson, and O'Neill Cruz 9 homers, 25 RBIs. And the power is going to be streaky for O'Neill Cruz. You know that. He's going to strike out a lot. But I thought this year was going to be the big power breakout for O'Neill Cruz. I thought it was basically going to take the Acuna, record of maybe going 40-40 this year, and he's got only 5 steals too. So definitely a disappointment there. He had Torkelson, who he was hoping to get some power out of. He's now in AAA, and so he's another team that's just thin offensively. The pitching staff is not great, and I think going to be worse as we go throughout the year. He's got Savali in his rotation with a 5.5 ERA. I think Seth Lugo isn't going to finish the year with a 2.13 ERA. That's not really a bold take there. I think Mitch Keller's pitched pretty well. Jake Irvin's pitched
Talk about
well.
a team that's been destroyed with injuries too, because he just lost. Who was the Rangers pitcher that just went down for the year?
Uh,
Javier. He just lost Javier for
oh,
the year
Christian
too.
Javier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yuri Perez already lost for the year.
Yep. So yeah, a little bit decimated by injuries. Nolan Jones has been hurting him. He was kind of turned out to be a bust. Evan Carter's was a bust, and he spent $27 and $28 on Carter and Jones respectively. He's got
Yeah.
no production and injuries out of him. So yeah, it's been a definitely disappointing year for him. Not everything his fault. But yeah, just overall the roster is not looking too good. I mean, he'd look a little bit better if O'Neill Cruz and Olsen hit their ceilings, but even then, I think there's just too many gaps in this roster.
He's going to hang in head to head, and he's done it so far. Head to head, why? When you look at his roto, I think he's like 11th in roto. When in head to head, he's right there for a playoff spot. He's competing. I think he's what is he 46 and 47. I was a lot higher on his team in the beginning of the year. I had him as a playoff team, so I
Yeah,
almost still need
yeah,
to have a little bit of faith in him. And my thing is honestly, there are some underperformers in this offense, but we just went through. I mean, we've almost gone through every team in the league thus far, almost. This is one of the better offenses in the league if they play well. I mean, Will Smith, Matt Olson, what Ketel Marte has done this year. Hae-Sung Kim is a very, very good fantasy player. Look at that stat line. Gunnar
Mhm.
Henderson look at that Brennan Doyle pickup. Brennan Doyle's on pace for, 40 steals, 50,
Yeah.
100 runs scored. So, I mean, again, shocker that he's a little light on outfield, having to start, Veerman and Talkman and stuff like this. But overall, this lineup is going to hang week in and week out and put up home runs, RBIs, OBP every week in a head-to-head performance category. The pitching, like you said, I just don't think holds up. It's going to be tough. Mitch Keller's been great. Seth Lugo has been amazing, but again, Seth Lugo is 34 and he's never really done this before, so I don't
Yep.
really know what to think about that. So, and there's no depth there. There's absolutely no depth. I think, and I know he's not totally been against this, but I think he needs to trade Gunnar Henderson.
Oof.
I think if he could somehow trade Gunnar Henderson and get like a quality bat and like a quality pitcher back in return that feels like a good return, I would consider that.
Interesting. He's got 1 year left. I didn't know if he was going to be a keeper this year, and he is cashed
Oh,
in
he's
and
killing it,
be a keeper
killing it.
next year too.
Easy, easy. Yep.
Yeah, talk about a breakout. So yeah, I mean it's tough to say because I mean who's trading the two pieces, so I don't know.
Well,
I
it's
mean
one of those things too. Like, would you? I know Robert is glass, but let's see. Dexter really doesn't have a. Would you trade if you're like Yamamoto and Robert for him?
yeah, I was even thinking like uh does he have any other pieces? I mean maybe you trade like like Henderson, Josh Young,
Ooh,
and
jeez.
somebody, but got back Austin Riley and Judge or something.
Oh, I don't know.
I know Peter's not,
I don't know,
not
man.
trading Judge, but I mean he'd have to.
Right.
It's hard to trade a guy who's performing as much as he has and then improve your offense. Like so, any 1-for-1, he
Yeah.
can't.
And that's the thing too.
He gets worse. His offense
Well,
gets worse if he trades for Robert.
well, my thing too is it's what do you believe in Carter and Jones? Obviously, both of them have huge prospect pedigrees. Both of them actually have done it in the major leagues before and just have been both riddled with injuries and just both plain sucked this year.
There's
But if you
almost no
believe
scenario where they can perform well enough to be worthy of a $28 contract.
right, and it's one of those things too where everyone's so thin in outfield. If they come back and even just play averagely well, Jung, I know very small sample size. I get it. He 17 at bats, but I'm a big believer in Jace Jung, especially with what he did last year. This offense has some reinforcements coming. I think he's got to trade. If you can somehow trade even Gunner for two pitchers, you might have to do it. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess the one sitting in front of him would be like Gunner for, I guess, like Luzardo and Riley, Wheeler and Riley. I don't know.
Wheeler and Riley would be a good return. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be something that could be talked into. But I guess would he want 1 year out of a $32 Gunnar Henderson, or would he
I
want?
would. Yeah.
I think there's probably better assets out there that he could get
Maybe.
from probably from yours truly or from others. I don't
Possible.
know. But I guess it's like, yeah, do you want like the shirt? I don't know. I personally would rather have some other assets maybe on some other rosters other than paying $32 for Henderson. Not saying that that's a bad value. I'm just saying
I mean, Gunner's on
I'd rather,
pace for 120 runs, 50 bombs. It's
yeah,
it's a lot.
I'd rather have a $4 Shane McClanahan than the $32 Gunnar Henderson. There's better value in that, in my humble opinion. But that's just me. People value things a little bit differently. All right, next we have sliding into the DMs in ninth place. We have Chris's team. Chris a little frustrated with his roster. He's got some veterans on the team that have kind of underperformed. Has he made any trades?
I believe so. Maybe one.
He made the Yelich trade. So he got Yelich, gave up Castellanos and Fetty.
Yeah.
How much before I grade this trade? Did he actually have the pitching depth to get rid of Fetty in this trade?
Because Chris is another one of those teams which hasn't really been talked about a lot, but again, is right there with Dana, right there with Jay, right? That head-to-head slog of right around 500. I mean, he's 46 and 48. He's very much in the head-to-head race here, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably would not have done I probably not would have not given up Castellanos and Fetty for Yelich there. Just because in his lineup, he's got Charlie Morton and who was Brady Singer in his lineup. Brady Singer's been pretty solid, 2.76 ERA, but he carries a 1.21 whip. About a strikeout inning, 66 strikeouts. I don't know if Singer's gonna
Eason
be
Peralta have been great though.
yeah. We say Peralta?
Yeah, and Singer or and Cease.
Well, Peralta's got a 3.95 ERA.
That's fine. He's got 92 strikeouts, which is
Not in
probably
this
what,
pitching
third in the league?
landscape.
Not third. Is that third in the league in Ks?
Yeah, and I mean,
That whip's
Cease
good.
3.51 ERA as well. I think Dylan Cease is a trade target of Eroc's dynasty squad with all those strikeouts that you could probably use.
Just so you know, seventh in the league right now in ERA is a 3.68. So him having a 3.95, yeah, it's a little bit below average. We keep talking about the landscape.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. I mean, when you're getting that many Ks, that's good. Would you not start him?
No, I would absolutely start him, but I think he's underperforming. I don't want a 3.95
Yeah.
ERA out of a guy that I spent $31 on.
But even Cease, a 9.61 whip is outstanding. 93 Ks, outstanding, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I believe even this pitching, Garrett Crochet, 103 Ks with I mean a 3.33 ERA. Again, another below one whip. You don't like this pitching? I
I
think
didn't
I think
say I
it's
didn't like the
performed
pitching. I
a
just
lot
think
better
I
than
said he didn't have
we
enough
ever thought it
pitching
would.
to trade Fetty because he still has Charlie Morton and Singer in his lineup. So it's not like he has like all
Oh,
this pitching depth to work with to just get rid of
yeah.
who's pitched pretty solid, unless he just doesn't really believe in Fetty.
Well, and
I
he's got three
thought
closers too. He's got Duran, Munoz, he's got Alvarado, so he's got a little bit of wiggle room there to do that. But
it's insane to me that
um,
that Dylan Cease went from having a 1.4 ERA in 2020, then a 1.24, he had a 1.44 whip, and then a 1.24 whip, and then a 1.1 whip, and then back to a 1.4 whip with the Sox last year in 177 innings, and now back to a sub one whip. I don't think whip was something that varies that high. He's always a high strikeout, high walk guy. And all of a sudden he's not walking anybody anymore. It's kind of strange to see him change this much in San Diego. So I mean, it's like that's the whole reason I was always out on Dylan Cease as an ace. It's like I don't think you can be an ace and carry 1.4 whip, but he's now not carrying at 1.4 whip. He's sub one whip now. So he's been pretty solid. So yeah, pitching as a whole. I mean, if you're gonna have Crochet and Peralta and Cease carry, that's a ton of strikeouts there and some decent
I believe
ratios.
in his pitching a hell of a lot more than his offense. When we looked at those last couple offenses, like Jordan's, when we looked at Dana's, when we looked at Jay's, I'll take probably all their offenses over Chris's though. And that's what I'm saying. I think Chris's pitching is actually what's really keeping them together because I think these are guys you can for the most part count on. Cease, Morton, I know he's getting older. Peralta, Crochet's been obviously excellent. The lineup again, we talk about holes in it. I think there's a lot of holes here. I mean, there's guys that are performing, but there's not a single guy on here that you can say is for sure hitting 30 home runs. He's got Witt, McMahon, and Simeon just over the double digit mark. He's got way too many guys at the 5-6 mark.
Yep.
I
Well,
don't know
that's
if he's
the
got a
thing. It's
single
like,
guy in his.
yeah, and he's, I mean, first base, obviously, when your first baseman only has 4 home runs, that hurts. And you don't have
Yeah.
any other first baseman on your
Does
roster.
he have a single guy outside of Witt that's going to get 100 RBIs? Maybe Simeon.
Yeah,
You know,
maybe. But I know he's kind of mentioned like a Rizzo trade, and then I was like, oh well, okay, let me take a look at the roster, and I'm like, I, who on this team would I trade for? I don't know who I would even trade Rizzo for. Not like Rizzo's great, but like I don't even know who my trade target. So I was like, well, I'd take Marcus Simeon. Like I'm obviously not targeting Bobby Witt. Like I don't have the kind of assets to pull off a Bobby Witt trade. So like I'm like, well, I don't really know. So yeah, I don't really love some of the assets here as a whole. I think you're kind of right.
right?
A lot of kind of blah going on. You got Gavin Sheets out there and Pena and like a lot of guys who played okay. Terang's been 24, 23 steals and a really good on base percentage. Not much in the power department. Pena's overall numbers are decent, but yeah, I think as a whole, who's really carrying the lumber with this group, you really don't know. It's kind of top heavy, with Bobby Witt and some of the pitchers he has, and just not really rounded out well enough to
And again,
really.
it's one of those things too where he's right in the head-to-head race. He's right there. He's fighting for a playoff spot. And I think that's why there's been a little bit of a lack of trades because okay, you give up Marcus. Okay, so let's say his pitching is good. All right, what is a return on a Freddie Peralta or a Dylan Cease? And then okay, if I do give that up, now I could argue that he's lacking a little bit of pitching, right? Because he doesn't have the depth to replace it. We
Yeah,
said that
and I don't think
already.
there's one trade he can make to jump vault himself into like the top three.
No, no. And I think at some point too, we're not there yet, but there is a point where obviously a lot of people are looking at head to head, and you can get to a point where if you're dominant, like we talked about Dane's offense potential or what other offense that was really, really good. you can get to a point in head to head where you're not really looking at roto. You can have 80, 85 roto points, but in head to head, if you're consistently winning 4 to 5 hitting categories every single week, and you just have to go out there and win 1 or 2 pitching categories, you could be a very good head to head team. And I wonder if teams start transitioning from, all right, I'm not really in the roto race, but what 4 or 5 categories can I be like really damn good at that I can almost chalk up as a W every week? And I think some teams have to maybe start looking at it like that.
The beauty of the Boys of Summer is there's always something to play for. And gotta love the league format if you're, even if you're not a roto team. I know a lot of guys probably look right now and if they're like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna catch Chad and Kyle in roto, so I might as well just punt to next year. But in head to head, anything can happen. And Jay's proven that with his 2 rings that he's got. That I don't think he was the best
Right.
team either one of those years where he got his 2 rings. So it
I
usually
mean,
the
look
best
at a team. Well, look at a team like Tyler, right? So he's eight. Tyler's eighth in roto with 70 and a half
That'll
roto
be our
points,
next team
right?
anyway.
But
So we can go transition to Tyler.
he's got 4 categories over 10 points. He's got Ks, ERA, WHIP, and wins quality starts. So if he really went down on that and said, I mean, I know you can't just easily say I'm winning those 4 categories every week, but on a consistent basis with his roto scores, if he's not going to win in roto, right? He's 70 and a half points. He's not going to catch 50 points down to Chad. So that's kind of out of the equation.
A lot of
And I know
seasons.
you don't, right. And I know you can catch second, third. I get that. But I guess my overall point is from a head to head perspective, he's in the playoff race right now. Really make sure you zone in on those. Don't worry that you're last in OBP. You're going to be shit in OBP. Don't worry that you're, third to last in this or that. Focus on those things you're good at. Get a little bit better at some of those others and really zone in and win
You can't
those
punt
4 or 5
you can't
categories that you
punt a
can.
category and win first place in roto, but you can punt 2 or 3
No.
categories and win head to head.
Yes. Yes. Yep. If you're really good at those 4 or 5 categories, you sure can be. Yep.
All right, so we have a couple big trades here. I guess Tyler is only in the business of doing blockbusters here. Starting on March 26th. Oh no, that was pre-draft. We have 2 big trades here. We have a 4 for 4 and another 4 for 4. First 4 for 4 he trade was the
Oh, to
Tyler
Wendy's.
was Peter's first big teardown move. Peter gave up. Oh no, it's a 5 for 4 actually. Peter gave up Paul Sewald, Julio Rodriguez, Gleyber Torres, and Adolis Garcia. Those 4 players went to Tyler. Tyler gave up Ohtani, pitcher Ohtani only, Jackson Churio, Paul Skeens, Colton Cowser, and Felix Bautista. Was this
This is probably the biggest trade of the league, right?
this year? Yeah. Ever? Maybe.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
no, not ever. Just this in the league this year. I think this is for sure the biggest
yeah,
one.
yeah. Would you think that for his return of Paul Sewald, Julio Rodriguez, Gleyber Torres, and Adolis Garcia, do you think that Tyler gave up too much, not enough, or just enough?
I really kind of looked at this one and I kind of broke it down from both sides and I really tried to see it. I think Tyler's actually done a pretty good job in terms of where we saw him at the beginning of the year with his draft. He was kind of saying, "Oh, doing this a little bit for the future, doing a little bit." I think Tyler's actually done a pretty good job of making his team competitive. Like I just mentioned, he's in the head-to-head race. But after really looking at this trade, I think Peter almost destroys Tyler in this one.
Uh,
I I really do. I think Peter getting Ohtani and Skeens in itself is huge. Now I get the whole move for next, but this isn't even a next year move. Paul Skeens is doing it right now. I mean he's doing it right now. So I mean Cowser, you get Bautista, arguably the best closer in baseball. I think I will say this. I'm not saying this was an awful move for Tyler, but man, was this a perfect move for Peter.
yeah, I mean, I think it's going to work out pretty well for Peter. I don't know. Maybe I gave Tyler some bad advice. Not that he asked for it. I just told him I was like, Paul Skeens' value is never going to be higher than it is right now. Right when he was debuting, he had that incredible game in his debut. Like everybody was viewing him as like, oh, this is like a top 10 pitch in the league right now, and I just don't think that's the
He
case. I think he
probably
has to
is.
improve, and there's no such the adage goes, there's no such thing as a pitching prospect because you never know when it's going to take guys a while to break in or they're going to break out and fizzle out. You just never know. That you can be Garrett Cole took a while to break out. A lot of guys, Scherzer took a while to break out, and like sometimes guys just takes a while to adjust and. It's very rare that a guy just bursts onto the scene. He's just an ace from the second he comes up to wherever. And a lot of guys can start off hot and then fizzle out. You never know. So, but I think people like you are buying the hopes and dreams of Paul Skeens, viewing him as a top 10 pitcher right now. And I just don't think that's kind of who he is. So
Even if he's not a top 10, even if next year he's a top, let's even just say 25. I mean, let's just say he's a top 25 guy. Does that really change the perspective of Peter Gotta? I mean, Otani's a Cy Young candidate.
Yeah.
If Skeens is even just top 25, you're talking a Cy Young candidate, a top 25 guy, maybe the best closer in baseball. I know he's coming back from injury. I get that.
Yeah.
We've seen Diaz and Hader. We've seen what happened with that. So I get that. But at that price, you're keeping Bautista. And then Cowser, I get, came off that huge start. But who's not keeping Cowser at $1 next year? So,
Yeah.
I mean, don't know, man. I think this was a huge win, huge win for Peter. And I get the point
Hauser
where
putting up
Tyler's
Cedric
getting
Mullins
Garcia,
numbers.
but yeah. Um, now lately, yeah, for sure. And again, it's not like one of these things where I hate Peter's return because I get where he's like, I'm going in it for this year and I'm trade. I get that, but I almost feel like, man, if you could have gotten away with this with taking away either Otani or Skeens, I think that makes a world. Now, obviously, maybe the trade doesn't get done, obviously, but that just seems like it was just like, oh, just a little too much. And that's what makes it tough because Skeens is doing it right fucking now. I mean, Tyler could use Skeens right now, maybe honestly, more than any of those other guys because Rodriguez isn't performing. Garcia's doing fine, but I mean, Skeens.
Tyler got 4 starters in this trade though. Like all 4 of his guys that he acquired are in his lineup right now. So I mean, like he did get Paul Sewald, who will be a keeper next year too. Paul Sewald putting up massive numbers in 10 innings, but 0.87 ERA and 0.48 WHIP in his 10 innings so far. He's got 7 saves in those appearances. And then those 3 offensive players with between Torres, Julio, and Adolis Garcia. Those guys are all in his lineup. And Tyler's one of the only teams that actually has outfield depth. He's got Will Benson on his bench, who's actually a decent player, 8 home runs, 9 steals. He's got 2 outfielders in his utilities. So, I mean, I've been scratching up the Tyler tree to try and get some of his outfielders as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, this is a roster that has a lot of promise on it. The offense,
it does. It's one of the better, honestly. It's one of the better offenses. It really is. If you had to rank, I do think it's in the top 5 or 6 offenses in the league. I don't disagree with that, and obviously that trade helps it. Getting Rodriguez, getting Garcia, I don't disagree with it. I just feel like it was a little too much to give up, man. You're talking, and I know you're not quite on the Skeens train yet, but you're talking 2 Cy Young pitchers for under $15 on Peter's team next
exactly what I'm
year.
saying. You're mentioning Paul Skeens in a Cy Young conversation. That's exactly why you should trade him
Yes,
and get 4 starters on your team for Paul Skeens when people are calling
but even
Cy
if he's
Young
not in the Cy Young
after 5 starts.
conversation, but even if he's not in the Cy Young conversation, I know we kind of had this talk earlier in the year, right? He probably missed out. I forget what we looked at when he got called up, how many starts he missed out on. Even if Paul Skeens next year, if I throw out this stat line, he has 160 innings, 210 Ks with a 3.5 ERA. That is worth 13. That is worth almost $30.
He'll probably.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, do you know what I mean? So it's just one of those things. Like, yes, we know Tommy John's a thing, but we can argue that that's a thing for anybody. Any pitcher can get that at any moment. There's no rhyme or reason for it. I just feel like with Tyler's approach of the draft, going, I'm going to get Churio, I'm going to get Skeens, I'm going to get Otani, and then to just trade him 2 months in when you're already facing a little bit of a head to head. It just seems a weird direction for me. And I feel like at this point, why not just hold on to Skeens? Why not just hold on to? I mean, who knows? Cheerio could be something. I mean, could we argue Cheerio? I mean, Julio Rodriguez hasn't done shit this year. I mean, literally, he hasn't done shit. So it's tough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, overall, we haven't really talked as a whole Tyler's team, but yeah, the offense is, I mean, top to bottom. I mean, we got mashers all across the board, outfield depth, and I think he's got some trade offers and some other teams. I mean, if he's gonna add, Bryson Stott to this lineup and subtract an outfielder, that could be something that could make his team even better. The pitching staff led by Corbin Burns, Mackenzie Gore pitching well, Ranger Suarez being a Cy Young in the NL, basically putting up Cy Young numbers. Bednar Sewald as his closers is pretty decent. 2 guys that are probably in the top half of what they offer from a saves perspective. I think that Javier Saad's going to start to regress a little bit. Tyler Anderson's going to regress a little bit. I don't think they're going to pitch as well as they are. So
you think Suarez regress? I mean, do you believe the Suarez train? I mean that.
No, I mean it. He might be a good pitcher, but I mean, it might finish the year with like a 3 ERA.
So let me bring it back then. Let me bring it back to this. I'm not saying that the return was awful, but even just from a pure this season perspective, don't forget the rest of the trade. Skeens is arguably next to Burns the best pitcher on the team. Right?
No.
I mean, rest of season. I mean, again, you can argue Suarez, right? I mean, with the
Yeah,
season Suarez is putting up,
argue
I wouldn't
Suarez.
hold it against you if you.
Yeah, you can argue Suarez, but I'd probably put Skeens ahead of Suarez rest of the year, just because he's on the field now. What he's shown from a strikeout
Right,
perspective, the nasty stuff he's shown. Yeah, probably.
right. So I'm
Um,
not even talking. Could he have maybe gotten Rodriguez and Garcia for Otani? And that I just think it's tough for him to have made that move because I mean, if you're telling me Tyler, and again, I like a lot of moves Tyler's made because again, I think Tyler's positioned himself pretty well in the head-to-head race. If you told me going into the playoffs, I had to go against Burns, Suarez, Gore, and Skeens, that to me, all of a sudden, I've always been a big believer in Gore. You know that. I know the numbers aren't
yeah,
amazing, but the K's are there, this or that. Great contract, $1. That scares me a little bit going into the playoffs. That four.
yeah.
You know, I just feel like the trade could have been worked
He was
around a little
compete.
bit differently.
If he didn't offer both, his offer was getting beat by others.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So yeah, I
that's
have no
what
idea
kind of
how that. Yeah.
pushed it to the finish line of putting both on the table is what got him all the assets that he did. Or else other offers probably would have competed. Uh,
Right.
for that. So yeah, I mean, I still think the pitching's solid. I think the offense is maybe like a top four offense in the league. So we'll see if he's got a little bit of a hole to climb out of, but I think this could be a team that maybe surprises us. I mean, maybe the summer hits, he gets hot, things change. He's got plenty of mashers on this roster, and maybe his offense will be good enough to carry him. And pitching, I think, will be good enough to maintain. I don't know if it'll be like a top pitching staff by the time we get to postseason, but I think it's good enough for now to make some waves. I like it better than most.
If I'm Tyler right now, I don't know, like just shit and giggling here for fun. If I'm Tyler, do you give up like Dexter's obviously giving up right now? I know Yamamoto, $30, you probably keep him, but if you're Tyler, do you give up a guy like Gore and Severino and take a shot on Yamamoto?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Tyler's already proven to be all in, so yeah, why not?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. And I feel like too many teams are trying to either, and that's the thing with the trades this year is I'm not surprised by a little bit of the lack of trades, but I think too many teams are either are you in or you out, and there's not too many teams that are looking at like, hey, you're how can I help you here? How can I help you here? But for the teams that are completely out of it, why not? If you're Dexter, I'll take a $1 Gore and a $3 Severino with how they pitched this year. Here's a $30 Yamamoto. Those are the kind of the trades that you might need to work out because, like you said, Tyler's all in this year. I mean, Tyler's
Yep.
completely all in. So, a $1 Benson, like you said, that could be something that's attractive. Who knows?
Yeah, one thing that like consist like I feel like a lot of teams have pitching, but not really a lot of teams have like overwhelming amounts of pitching. I mean, we haven't really gone through a lot of rosters where like this team should move a pitcher. Have we?
Right.
I
No,
can't.
not too much. And to think too, I mean, no, not really. No.
So yeah,
And to think too,
it's not like
Tyler.
I can see a roster where it's like, man, they have 7 or 8 pitchers. They really need to move one.
Right. Well, I think Tyler might be the one because I mean, look at Tyler's bench. Now, granted, these are not amazing numbers. The strikeout numbers are a little down on these guys, but when you look at those ERAs and for the most part those WHIPs, Lorenzen, Severino, Stone, Hicks. Look at Gray on the injured
Yeah,
list. Look, Kirsch. I mean, all those are pretty freaking solid numbers.
like a
So
pesky team. This looks like a
yeah.
threat to me.
I mean, if you could trade like a Severino and a Stone and go out there and grab something else or this or that, I mean, like I said, that's why I did not love the Skeens deal because I think he had, I don't know, man. Skeens would look nasty on this team. It would. And like you said, maybe the trade wouldn't have worked
Then he
because,
doesn't have Adelise, he doesn't have Julio and Glaber and everybody and his closer.
yeah. Yeah. But Glaber's been asked this year. Rodriguez has been asked this year. So, like, at this point, what is he losing?
Yeah, that's fair. All right, we got to move on to Justin. We're almost probably like 2 hours already. Just gonna be a quick pod,
Yeah.
We're just gonna talk to the teams briefly, be really quick, short-winded,
Never
right?
turns out that way.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I was ready with the power rankings and everything. We've broken down the teams. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. All right. We have Justin's team, who now we have to talk about being on the other end of giving up J Ram and receiving Walker Bueller and Christopher Morel, which I guess in the grand scheme of things, considering he's already been announced that he's going to be a
Yeah.
rebuilding team, he is.
Probably both keepers.
Yeah, Morel should be a keeper. And I think you're gonna hold on to Walker Buehler, even if he doesn't perform well. You're probably
Yeah.
just gonna hold on to the hope at the salary he's at. So I think in the grand scheme of things, he probably would have gotten more for J Ram had he held on and been a seller. But I know he's really high on Christopher Morel. And, at the time, we didn't know what we were getting out of Walker Buehler. It's not like Walker Buehler was proving to be not good the way he has so far. So, I mean, I get the logic of the deal. It just isn't going to be one that panned out. So for him and to really get the value of what J Ram has provided your team. So I'm probably going to still give it like a C minus, unfortunately, but the head was in the right place, just didn't work out.
And to be fair, J Ram at that point was, I think he traded him to me and he had like a 258 on base percentage. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it was like a mid-April trade, so we were only talking 2, 3 weeks in, but I mean, J Ram was awful at that point, but he's definitely turned it around.
So what went wrong with Justin's team? Why is he down here in was it 10th place in or 11th place in head to head down here?
It's tough because if preseason rankings, I had Justin at 10. So this is about where I had him. I just thought it was lacking a little bit in terms of, you look at the lineup, there are names there, but again, I mean, where's the superstar?
Mhm.
Where is he? I mean, I wouldn't quite say Schwarber's the super. I mean, fantasy wise, Schwarber's, but I mean, where's the superstar bat? I think we're
Well,
missing that.
Justin did not want to
In terms of,
overpay for what the superstars were going for.
and I think that's where we're missing it right now. And you throw into the fact that there's some underperformers. Michael Harris is
Yep.
underperforming again. Um, uh,
Ian
let's
Happ
Brandon
so
Lowe
far.
has not. Yep,
Yeah.
has not really played much this year. Yeah, he's getting nothing out of his catching position. Oh, I mean, really, when you look at this team, it is a lot of just average blah guys. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's overperforming. Nobody's a lot of under. It's just missing. It's just missing a couple bats. And then when you go to the pitching, I will say the pitching's held up pretty well, but it's a lot of guys like Falter, Ben Brown, Flaherty's been amazing for him. Flaherty's been amazing, and that's a guy you got to really hold on to and keep. But Diaz has been awful. We had a lot of conversation about how good he could be and
Yep.
how I thought he would be great. He hasn't been. So it's really tough for Justin because some of his best players are going to be guys he's going to want to keep anyway. Imanaga, you're keeping.
Yep.
Flaherty, you're keeping. It'd be silly not to. Volpe at this point, you're keeping, right? 15.
Probably.
Morel, you're probably keep
Yeah. I mean,
Cronenworth.
you really have to put some good piece on the table if you want to acquire Schwarber and Volpe. Like those are guys that he could keep next year. He doesn't have to move those guys, but like at the same time, like if you're just going to keep those guys, you're just running back the same roster you had this year. So like, what are you really expecting to change next year? So, I mean, you're going to have to get better values for next year. Maybe like an injured guy, like. I'm not wishing this on you. Oh, you're gonna hate me for doing this, but like if
No,
Elliot
no, no.
goes down with a shoulder injury or someone like that, I'm just talking about somebody who we know is at a stud at a cheap value who like
Right.
could get hurt and still be a keeper next year. Like someone like that, then like that's probably the guy that you could target. Like if something like that were to happen, then you go like, well, yeah, maybe then I would trade something like this. But it's gonna be hard to really pry these guys away.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's just one of those things again too, where his best performing players he's going to want to keep.
Yeah,
I think a Nimmo one is interesting because I think a lot of people need outfield help, and I think
yeah.
Nimmo is just one of those guys with that stat line. That's a
A
pretty
little bit of
solid
everything.
stat line that a little bit of everything that I think a lot of teams could go out there and afford. But again, maybe with the lack of outfielders, does Nimmo become a keeper at $15 next year? He could. Conforto. I've never been a
He's the
big
guy you
San
throw
Francisco.
back and just draft him for 15 next year if you really want him.
Right. So I think, overall, it's just been tough for him because, I think he was missing another superstar bat. And I think when you look at the pitching, we're talking about a lot of guys really that weren't expected to do this. Imanaga, Flaherty, not expected to do this.
Yep.
Ben Brown, he got up off waivers. Falter kills you in strikeouts. So he really better keep that whip the way it is. But overall, it's just been a tough go for him because I think he's just missing that star power.
Yeah, a little bit. And I know I talking to him, I know he's kicking himself a little bit for not going in on a few more guys, but yeah, it's just unfortunate. Just I don't know exactly what it was. Just for us, it just didn't really work out. I mean, you paid 30 for Michael Harris, hasn't really gotten anything out of him when you could have just paid $10 more and gotten a guy that really would have contributed, a lot better than Harris has in the draft. And he's gotten some good pitching performances, but yeah, I guess just altogether as a whole, it just didn't really come together for him. Hasn't had the right pitching
Well, think
performance.
of guys like
What's that?
McKenzie and Montgomery, both very good pitchers last year, this and that, and both of them haven't
Yeah.
really been viable in fantasy this year. So it's
Yeah,
just been tough.
Certainly hoping for a lot more out of those guys. So yeah, if he gotten last year production at Jordan Montgomery and what Tristan McKenzie, if he hit his ceiling, then he's looking at one of the top pitching staff. I mean, if he was getting last year's numbers out of Montgomery and McKenzie, you're right. And if Walker Bueller got back to what he
Yep.
could have been, then his rotation is Shota, Castillo, Flaherty, and those three. That's like the best rotation in the league. If
Yeah.
each of those guys hit their
I mean,
ceiling,
just
kind of fell short, and it's unfortunate for him. But I don't really know what to tell him. I don't look at this and be
uh,
like, well, he did this, and that wrong. It just kind of didn't work out with the guys that he put
and just
together.
even right now, I mean, even just right now, Castillo, Imanaga, and Flaherty is probably one of the best 1, 2, 3s. I mean, not expected. No one
Yeah,
would have predicted this before the season, but Flaherty, Imanaga, and Castillo is probably one of the best 1, 2, 3s in the league. But there's just too much else not going right. There's just too
yeah.
much else not going right. And again, those are probably three of or two. Castillo is a C, but Imanaga and Flaherty, Justin should be hard pressed to give up those guys right now with how they're playing. I mean, who
No,
knows if they
he should
keep doing
not give up
this?
Jack Flaherty for a buck.
Yeah, I mean, if he continues his pace, that's one of the best contracts in the league. So, and
I
like you said, Volpe. I mean, Volpe's on pace. Volpe's on pace for damn near 110 runs, 30 steals. Close to 20 home runs. I mean, a lot of people kind of wrote off Volpe because of how he did last year, and there's another guy that could be a really valid Cronenworth. He's on pace for over 100 RBIs.
Mhm.
That's another $1. So there's definitely some pieces here. Get out of maybe those bigger contracts of the Schwarber, even though he's been very much worth it. Even if you could trade Harris, even if you could trade Harris for a guy that you might keep for $4 or $5 next year, just do it. Have someone take a shot on Harris. People need outfielders.
Yeah.
Go and get a guy that you might be able to keep for $4 or $5 next year. Stuff like that.
Yep. He's gonna like hearing you say that because he had a Michael Harris offer. He scoffed at it. If you're listening to this pod, you know who you are. That sent him a Michael Harris offer that he did not really care for your offer, but you're kind of maybe talking him into moving him for a little bit, lowering the price on him a little bit. So yeah, maybe we'll see.
And there's nothing
Um,
stopping him from waiting until July. But I mean, you've heard me say this in the chat too. I know he's not a C contract player, but for a guy like Peter, I know he's been waving around Luzardo and all that. But Luzardo's value goes down every single start he has. I mean,
mhm.
he has X amount of starts left right now in the year. If
Yeah.
you wait till when is our deadline? July 30, whenever it is, August
Well,
1st,
I don't
whenever
think
our
people are
deadline
lining up
is,
for Luzardo. I know I'm
you're
not.
no, but at the same time, you're talking when we get to August, you're talking maybe 10, 9 starts left. I mean, so A contracts you can wait a little bit longer. Hey, you got a couple years left on them, but if you're out of it, if you're Justin, if you're Dexter, if you're Peter, and you're actually throwing in the towel right now, those C contracts are never more valuable than right now. I mean, every start they have, especially with pitchers, you're losing that value. And Luzardo, look at his ERA now, 5.3. Who's going after that?
You and I don't always see eye to eye on that. I know I understand where you're coming from because especially with the pitchers, and I guess it's the same for anybody. You'll get the more months you can get out of them, the more production you'll actually get out of them. But I just think you just have to wait for the right deal. I mean, it doesn't do any good for Peter to trade Luzardo for PCA right now, just because PCA is a maybe. But sometimes guys get hurt. Injuries happen, like a Garrett Mitchell last year, where Garrett Mitchell was playing well then gets hurt, and then he's like, oh, well, now all of a sudden he's a trade asset, or like let's say, I don't know, there's a $1 guy out there. Let's say Cronenworth goes down with an injury or something like that. He gets hit on the hand, he gets hurt, and now all of a sudden Justin would trade him, but like he's a $1 A player who is playing well, who can't help Justin anymore. Now he's a better trade asset somewhere else. Like I think things like that happen. But I guess they can also happen in reverse, like we said with Jonathan India last year, but that also didn't work out. It re-reversed actually with India being a good player. So I just think it's holding off to getting a deal of getting guys back who you're actually going to keep. So I think that Peter doesn't need to trade Luzardo right now just for some maybe, unless he's going to get a guy where he knows or is very confident he's going to keep him next year, and that goes for pretty much anybody. Or if maybe Luzardo is the deal that if he packages him with Riley, gets him the asset back that he actually wants. So I think it's just all about timing and an opportunity of make sure you're making the right deal. Let's talk about Dex's team. Dex made a trade with trade with Krim, and that's the only trade he's made since draft night. He traded away Stroman, got back Alcantara and Dominguez. I like that deal for him. I think he got two keepers for next year. We'll see with Dominguez. I mean, he has to have a spot next year, but if he gets any time, any kind of semblance of playing time. I think he's going to be a keeper for next year. And then Sandy, you're keeping him. The ceiling of what he can be is too high. I love me some Sandy Alcantara. I thought his number, I was just waiting for his numbers to come down last year. Never happened, unfortunately, but I still believe in who he is as a player. I love watching him pitch. He's great. So I kind of like that deal there. But when it comes to Dex's roster, I mean, I think this all just goes back to draft night. I think he just waited and waited and waited and pocketed his money, didn't want to bid, and then there was just nobody left. And so he was just left with all the scraps. And when I look at this roster, this is a roster full of scraps. And that's kind of, all I really see. He had Luis Robert as a keeper, but the guys that he drafted, he's just not really getting any production on any of the guys he drafted. So I'm sure it's really frustrating for him, but the guys he did spend money on, which is not many guys, Chas McCormick, Paul Goldschmidt, Zach Eflin, Yamamoto was okay. But Eovaldi, he's just not getting enough production out of the guys he actually spent his money on this year. Bogarts.
Yeah, and even guys that he kept, unfortunately, Robert had been hurt. Bogarts has been hurt. Anyone he spent money on, McCormick, obviously, we kind of talked about that on draft night. That it's just been shambles for him. Goldschmidt, we kind of talked that draft night. We're like, dang, $25 for Goldschmidt. That's actually not too bad with what he does. But Goldschmidt's been bad this year, so it's just pretty much anything that's gone wrong. Nico Horner's been hurt. Anything that's gone wrong has. I mean, his best two fantasy players offensively are Rooker and Stanton. And both of them have massively out $5 and $7. Those are all Rooker's on pace for a damn good season. I mean, that's arguably probably the best contract outside of Willie Contreras
He's
on
trying
his
to move
team,
him.
maybe. Yeah. So it's tough. Like I said, I think Noevo Marte for $1. I know he's suspended for a bit. So he's got some pieces here. Yamamoto for 30, and that's where it's tough because I think some people look at the A's and instantly think they have to keep them. I think if the right move comes along, that Yamamoto is an interesting one where okay, maybe Dexter does trade that, get a couple keeper pieces back or possible back. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. But
Eovaldi's another one. Eovaldi $19. Do you maybe trade him? I don't know.
hopefully you can shop these guys around, get some good deals here and there on some of these guys. Maybe a closer goes down Ryan Helsley. I'd be apprehensive trading for Ryan Helsley just because if the Cardinals decide they want to trade him at the deadline, he'd make a really good setup guy for the Dodgers or whoever else. So he has setup experience before and high leverage role. So I don't know. I'd be hesitant to trade for him. I'd rather trade for him after the trade deadline or figure out what that's gonna happen. But yeah, I mean, some interesting pieces here for next year. And I mean, hanging on to both Mateo and Ruiz. I mean, I wish he chose between one or the other on those guys, and both kind of fizzled out a little bit from what we kind of expected out of them. So,
And
yeah,
Willie Contreras, though. Come on now. I don't want to hear that slander.
I wouldn't keep him for 16 though.
You're crazy. You're crazy.
Yeah, David Fry is putting up 80% of the number.
He's on pace for 100 runs.
Of the price.
100 runs and 100 ribbies. That's worth it. I mean, that's worth it regardless of position, right?
Not
100 runs, 100 ribbies,
16 homers and 8 stolen bases.
A 380 on base.
I can't find 16 homers and 8 stolen bases. I can't spend $16. Won't get me that.
Okay, forget that. 100 runs, 100 RBIs, and a 380 on base. You're paying that $16 for any position. Any position. Right? 100 RBIs, 100 runs, and a 380 on base. You're paying $16 for that. Outfield, catcher, third base, short. It don't matter. You're paying 16 for it. You're crazy. You're crazy.
We'll see if he finishes the year with 100 and 100. I don't know if I'm willing to put money on it, but I would say it's more probable that he doesn't finish the year with 100 and 100.
Right. I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying at this pace.
He's on pace for that for sure. I mean, he's on pace for more than that. He's on pace for like 110, 110. So, but I don't know. I think it'll kind of come down a little bit. Yeah, but we'll see how that goes. Next in our head-to-head standings is going to be Special K. Wow, I did not expect this team to be down there. Only one of us.
You had him like 7th in your preseason rankings, I think 7th or 8th.
Let's see. I had him
because he aggregated out to 11th.
I had him 6th.
Yeah, so you had him as like a playoff team.
Yeah,
what happened? You take it away.
I had him as playoff team. I don't know what happened. Let's see. Trades wise, he's only made 1 trade this year. Usually we know he's good for a few more trades than that. He's only made the Neris Littell trade where he kind of gave up Littell or gave up Neris and got back a okay pitcher who hasn't really done a whole lot. So I wish he would have held out, I guess, Neris, but maybe didn't really believe in Neris. Neris is barely hanging on to the job. It's just because the Cubs don't have any better options. The only reason Neris has the job in the first place. So, Littell is startable. He's just not that good. I mean, this pitching staff is not good at all. He's got Gausman, who's got a 4 ERA. Hunter Brown in his rotation blew up with that massive start, and he still has a 5.58 ERA. Kyle Gibson, 3.7 ERA. Bryce Miller, 3.81 ERA. Zach Littell, 3.63 ERA. So that's his starting rotation there. I didn't even there's no ace there. I guess he has Darvish hurt, Luis Garcia hurt, Merrill Kelly hurt. He was banking on Merrill Kelly to be his ace, I guess. So yeah, the pitching is, I
Bobby
guess,
Miller's probably the closest
Kevin Gausman, I guess.
thing.
What's that?
I said Bobby Miller's probably his closest thing to performing as an ace right now.
He has Bryce Miller.
Oh, Bryce Miller. Sorry, I get the names mixed up. Yeah, Bryce Miller's been solid for him. The ERA is a little higher, but yeah.
Yeah, he's been okay. Under strikeout an inning, still 3.8 ERA. Solid whip 1.01. But, the pitching's been pretty bad for him, and the lineup has holes. He doesn't have, nobody on pace for 30 home runs, nobody on pace for 25 home runs in his lineup. Machado's been disappointing. Lindor's been disappointing. Freeman's been normal himself with the counting stats, but you know what you're getting out of Freeman. You're not getting 30 home runs out of Freeman. You're getting 20, 25 home runs and a little bit of everything else. Perez has been great, but he's kind of slowed down ever since then. So, yeah, outfield is brutal. Bleday, Jock Peterson, Schneider, Verdugo in his outfield. Just like the rest of us. He's actually picked up a few guys that are pretty interesting. Josh Bell on his bench, 7 homers, 31 RBIs, 27 runs scored, and 319 on base percentage. That's, startable, not great. Candelario's been playing really well lately. Nick Gonzalez, I bid 0 on him because I don't have Fab. He bid 1 on him. Gonzalez has last month has a 21 RBIs in his last 30 days. So he's actually been really solid. But I wonder if he's going to get those guys into his lineup. And then Langford been a disappointment. Buxton been a disappointment. So he's had some disappointments, and overall just not a team that's constructed to really go anywhere. And just no pitching, no hitting. I don't really know what to say. You were kind of right about it. Pretty underwhelming.
Yeah, it's been a rough year for him, and like I said, I trusted in his trade abilities, but he's not gotten any done. Not shocking, given the offers that have gone out. And his direction this year has been kind of interesting because it seems like at some points he's been trying to go all in with the stuff, but at the same time it's like at some point that's got to stop. At some point, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of assets, and we've talked about this. He's not the only one. We've talked about this with other teams too. What assets are you really giving up looking for next year right now? I mean, I know it doesn't have to be a C contract guy, but all right, Gibson, you can trade. If I'm him, honestly, I know these contracts aren't bad, and I know that we always have this closer conversation every year. I would see what I could get from Clase and Scott. I mean, Scott's only got 7 saves as the Marlins closer, so I don't know what people would really give for him, but
I don't think there's any
ERA is really good.
I think Jay is the only one that really needs a closer, right?
Right. But if you could with Clase's and with Clase's dominance this year, you can maybe prize something from someone. But overall, really, there's really not a whole lot going forward in this team at all. I mean, this is almost like you need a clean slate kind of team. I mean, that's really how like you said, Machado has underperformed. I just don't you can't go into the season thinking Machado and Freeman are going to carry the offense because there really is nothing else here. There's nothing else.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's kind of dead in the water, and I don't really see any A contracts here, that are prized assets for anybody that he can go and get a Luis Robert or Austin Riley. So, it's looking pretty bleak for him. He could, I don't know, he could trade Lindor, Machado, and Freeman, but there's so many sellers in the league right now. I don't know. He could say I'm going to sell. He doesn't want to sell. I talked to him. He's like, I'm not a team that's going to just tank. That's not my style. So, but even if he did, if he said I'll give up Lindor, Machado, Freddie Freeman, Salvador Perez in Class A, I don't know. He's competing. There's a lot of good teams that are selling right now. And then we have 4 or 5 selling teams. And then, the too many sellers, not enough buyers, you're not going to get anything for those guys. So it's not like there's a bunch of prize
here's the thing too,
around either.
No, and he's here. And here's the thing, and I think sometimes we do look at the A and the B and the C contract too much. What's stopping him from trading Machado and Lindor together in one trade? And granted, no, you're not going to get the value back you thought you should get. Or I know they're 2 all-star players, But if you could trade Machado and Lindor, someone that's competing, that's going for it, like a Tyler, like for example, let's play trade wonder right here. Tyler wants to go in on it, right? Tyler wants
Yeah.
to go in. He wants to take it. He wants to win it. What was stopping Tyler? And I know I'm bringing up the Skeens thing again. Trade Skeens for Lindor and Machado.
Well, yeah, I already told you the thing that's stopping him was he doesn't get that deal done with Peter unless he includes Skeens in there. But I mean, yeah, that would make some sense, but it just also it's not Phil's style.
It's just yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's tough like that because I think there's times where if players are vastly underperforming, which a lot of players are. I mean, Chet and that's the difference between like a Chad and a Phil. Chad's very much in it. He's got no reason to trade Corbin Carroll. His team's already great. You might as well wait for Corbin Carroll to turn it around. Phil, on the other hand, right now, nobody in their mind is keeping Machado at 31 or Lindor at 29 next year. So why not? Hey, say, hey, I'll package you on both. You try to take them on the turnaround, hope they do what they usually do, and give me a cheap keeper or two back. But you're not going to get what you think you should get back for Machado and Lindor at this point. But don't get nothing. I mean, we were at this point last year when he was calling me saying I wasn't going to get anything for my guys. So he's sitting in that spot now. So it's tough.
Yeah, I have Justin on the line here. Caller calling in. I don't know if the pod can hear him. Justin, what's going on?
Number I was looking for?
Yeah, the suicide hotline. You might need that one with the way your team's performed this year as well. Oh, what's going on? Are you looking to wheel and deal? What's on the table here?
Listen, wheeling and dealing's always on the table. I'm just looking for the right offers out there.
No, I thought I sent you a better offer than my original offer in your inbox.
Listen, kid, it's there, but it's not there. You know what I'm saying? There's a couple of pieces involved that I like, but I don't know. We'll see.
All right, if you say so.
There's irons in the fire. Let's just put it that way.
Uh-huh. All right, we'll have to see what that turns out to be for the Wahoo Maniacs. Ever since that name change, the Wahoo Maniacs have performed like the Wahoo Maniacs.
Well,
actually, that's the first edition of the Wahoo Maniacs.
Let's take some polls on what's going on for a new name, maybe.
Yeah. I think you need to change the whole
Switch
culture.
it up.
Yeah, change the culture. Have you guys talked about the pitiful Chicago baseball scene yet?
I think that'll be like hour 3, hour 4. We'll be talking about the Cubs.
Yeah, gotta plan it out.
I was talking about the White Sox too. The pitiful Chicago baseball.
Hey, I'm not one to kick a man while he's down. First of all, just kidding. That's exactly who I am.
You know, I started my Jerry Reinsdorf rant earlier, but the moment that they just decided that Chris Getz was going to be their GM without even doing a search, set them back at least 2 to 3 years. Just bringing people from other organizations in and just talking to them and getting ideas about how to run your organization is sometimes more beneficial than even hiring those people.
Right thing to do.
When the Cubs did their manager search for David Ross, they brought tons of baseball minds in to hear them out, to just see, hey, how would you run this thing? And that can then shape how they want David Ross to run things from there. Just bringing smart baseball minds in is invaluable. And they didn't even do that. They're like, oh, no, we're just going to hire Chris Getz. We got to leave things the way they are. Now here we are, 16 wins into 75 games.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree 100%. That's the way a well-run organization would do it.
Yeah, they're not well run, and neither are the Chicago Bulls, and that's why we are.
Damn Reisendorf.
Yep, exactly. All right, well, we're gonna try and maybe finish this pod and keep it under 3 hours. Thanks for calling.
Send your offers. If nothing gets done before this gets published, then send your offers. I don't want scrubs. I need a full reboot of A and B prospects only. So keep that in mind.
Whatever.
There you go. I like it.
All right, so that should probably about do it for Phil's team, which only leaves us one team, the biggest underperformer, which is Pistol Pleats Platoon. Put all his eggs in the all-star basket. What's that?
I said, yikes. Yeah, I know Peter's team's been awful. Yeah.
Yeah. You put all his eggs in the all-star basket and it didn't pan out for him. I mean, he's got good players and Judge and I guess good player, I guess. I guess Judge and Wheeler have really like been two top 10, players in regards to fantasy this year, but then just nothing else around him worth a damn and just couldn't really compete with some of the other teams, couldn't keep up. He's made just the one trade, which was the big one with Tyler, where we talked about he acquired Otani, Churio, Paul Skeens, Cowser, and Bautista. So you're giving Peter an A+ for that?
Oh yeah. Peter did great. Like I said, I think Peter did awesome, especially with where his team was headed. I mean, it's tough to sell as early as tough to see that because again, we don't want 3-4 teams selling super early. But I mean, where Peter wasn't given everything. I mean, it really, I think the return was great for him. I think he did a good job there.
Yeah, I think it's going to work out well for him. And if Julio keeps playing the way he is, he's not going to be much of an asset anyway. So Garcia's kind of cooled off too. So he didn't really have to give up the moon either. He still has three of the best players on his roster still. So yeah, I think it worked out well for me. You gotta give him an A. So yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of goes to show, like, I mean, you can't just put all your eggs in the basket of 2 or 3 star players and then not round out your roster. And then he also drafted guys like Jackson Holiday and Beatty and Colson Montgomery. Like he needed guys that could contribute this year. Like he can't draft guys that are
Yep.
going to contribute down the road. Like if you're going to go the stars and scrubs method, you can't draft prospects on top of it and then not get guys that contribute. I mean, he's got 4 guys on his bench right now. They're in their minors. And so it just didn't work out. I know he's in a different phase of the rebuild now. So, yeah, it just you get what you pay for. You really have to thread a tight needle if you're going to try and spend all that money on a couple guys, and it didn't work out for him, So it maybe lesson learned. It's better to have a more balanced roster, but I don't know, because Justin tried building the balanced roster too, and it didn't work out for him either. So it's just you just really got to hit on the lower price guys, and I don't even know what the takeaway is, but it's just like
Yeah.
you can't do this, I guess is the takeaway.
No, and he's got a really interesting decision to make because obviously would Judge at $51, and if he keeps the pace he's keeping, he's a keeper at $51. I mean, I know we
Yeah.
talked a lot after the draft about a lot of players were not overpaid, but like none of these a lot of these people are going to be thrown back. I don't think that'll necessarily happen, but if Judge keeps the pace he's on, he's being kept at $51. But other than that, Peter's got some tough decisions to make. Zach Wheeler has been every bit a part of and valuable as $43, but you have a Garrett Cole at 46. You have a Bobby Miller at $33. You have some decisions to make because there's a rotation here of Skeens, Wheeler, Otani, Cole. That's nasty with Bautistas. There's a lot going on here, but I don't think you can keep them all at that price. So I'm really curious, and I know there's been conversations here or there, what a return of a Wheeler and a Cole look like because Cole comes back soon. And I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been a little bit more heat up talk about that from Peter. But
Yeah.
Cole and Wheeler come back soon, and I think he needs to trade one of them and get 2 keepers back. Again, you might not get what you think you should get back for Garrett Cole or Zach Wheeler, but if
Yeah.
you can get 2 cheaper keepers back rather than just say, well, shit, I guess I'll just eat the salary. I think that's a better choice to make because Peter really is, as horrible of a season he's had, a Skeens, Otani, either Wheeler or Cole, 1, 2, 3 heading into next year. That sounds disgusting.
Yeah. It could be pretty solid. I mean, that's the goal of the rebuild is to set yourself up for next year and hope that you're one of the top teams the following year. I mean, we kind of saw that with Chad 2 years ago and set himself up nicely. And I guess, he's the blueprint of what you really need to do. So yeah, I mean, I think he set up pretty nicely for next year. I don't know if now's the time to kind of talk about it, but I guess now's the time to look back at it being a failure, and we'll have plenty of pods to talk about what his team's looking like for next year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it.
All right. Do we wrap up here? Do we say anything about the Cubs and Sox?
Oh man. Well, Cubs are still in a playoff spot, so that's good.
Yeah, finally gets back in a playoff spot.
I'm telling you, the NL's bad. There's those 3 good teams, and then after that, it's a bunch of mush. So, it'll be interesting. I've heard the Vlad rumors ramping up lately. I wonder if that's a possibility. I don't know what Toronto really gives him up for, but
I think the price would be too high, and I also don't think that Vlad really does anything for the Cubs. I mean, yeah, it makes them better, but like this offense is so anemic as is, and like if Vlad is going to be the guy that he's been the last 2 years, like it's not really going to do anything. We're still going to be a below average offensive team, and just I don't know. It's like Vlad, I don't think Vlad is going to just turn our season around. So like I just think there's too many holes. There's too many guys that are going to hit 20 home runs and no more, no less than that. And Dansby Swanson is a good ball player. Like Nico Horner's a good ball player. Seiya Suzuki and Ian Happ are good ball players. Cody Bellinger is a good ball player. None of those guys are going to hit 25 home runs this year. And like maybe Seiya Suzuki will, but like having a roster full of guys that are just like average hitters, and when they're slumping and the hitting is contagious and nobody's actually getting on base, it's not a good problem to have. We can't chain together starting pitching. When starting pitching's good, the bullpen sucks. When the bullpen's good, the starting pitching isn't going deep, and then the offense doesn't support it. And the offense as a whole is just anemic. But like when you're paying Dansby Swanson, I like Dansby Swanson. I still support the signing, but like people are expecting Dansby Swanson to be like, oh, well, he's a $170 million guy. He should be hitting 35 home runs. That's not who he is. Dansby Swanson needs to be like the 2-hitter or like the 6-hitter on a good team where you actually have a guy like Pete Alonso and some other guys around him. But we just don't have those guys. I don't see the path to getting those guys.
Yeah, and like you said, we don't really have. I mean, Happ's home run numbers are down, Bellinger's home, and I really do think that this is about the player you're going to get from Bellinger. I mean, I'm not saying his numbers. I think last year the 300 average, the 25. I know he's hit 40 bombs before. I know he's won an MVP before, but I think the 260, 270 average, the 340, 350 on base, maybe right around 25 home runs is what you're getting from Bellinger. We do not have a 30, 40 home run guy. We just don't. But we do got a lot of prospects coming up. But I will say this:
they're all outfielders, and we have nobody play third base and nobody catch.
Yeah, the pitching has been, and I think catching is a huge hole that I don't think people talk about enough. That we want to talk about how bad the offense is. There is zero coming from the catcher slot at all. I mean, between Amaya and Gomes, it's awful. But the pitching,
second catcher, same thing with Gomes.
Yeah. The pitching, on the other hand, I don't think anyone in their mind expected Assad, Imanaga, even Brown. They're all pitching great. Early in the year, we had to really worry about the bullpen getting all those innings, but Imanaga, Assad, Brown's got nasty. I'm pretty excited about the pitching, but it's been tough.
I think the only way that you trade for Vlad is if Danny Jansen comes with him.
Yeah. I've seen some trades like that. Well, let me just ask you this: Would you do it for, let's say, who's their best pitching prospect not named Horton at this point? If I'm trying to think, if I said it would cost Bush, Shaw, and Alcantara, would you do it?
No, I wouldn't.
Because Bush, they have 6 years
no,
control.
We don't need to trade Shaw. We need to trade the outfielders. So
right,
yeah, you can have Kevin Alcantara, you can have Bush, and that's fine. So yeah, I mean, I would do it for Bush, Kevin Alcantara, and shit, I'll give you PCA if you're throwing Romano.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they do all that, but yeah, they could.
And Owen Casey's there, as well. You have
that's what I'm saying. I just really wonder what it is, because it's not like Vlad's arbitration number next year is going to be 20. It's not. I mean, we get like a year and a half of him before he's gone. So
is what's his name still resounded as a prospect? Who's the guy that's hitting all the home runs right now with the back problems?
Brennan Davis.
Yeah, Brennan Davis. He's still considered.
Yeah, he'd still be considered. Yeah.
Throw him in there.
Yeah, he's been killing it this year too. So.
Well,
yeah, I said, overall it comes down to the cost. I don't know what the cost is. I really don't know, because again, even a guy like Morel, you still have 4 years of control of. Bush is theoretically a rookie. We have 6 years of control. So I wonder what kind of value they carry, especially since they're already on the big league club too.
But Bush does probably have more perceived value than he actually to a major league club than what we've seen so far, because of all those rookie scale contract and years of control.
He's making the league minimum for the next 3 years. I mean, yeah, I think there's definitely some value there.
All right, well, let's wrap there. For Kyle, for Eric, I'm Kyle. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you guys got to the end. Hopefully you guys cleared out your entire day to listen to this podcast. And
we didn't even do power rankings, damn it. That's next week.
That's next week. That's part two. Part two, baby. All right, peace.